Every day, millions of people wake up already exhausted. Not because life is destroying them, but because their own mind never stops worrying. They worry about money, relationships, the future, people's opinions, problems that haven't happened yet, and situations they cannot control. Even during peaceful moments, anxiety keeps stealing their ability to enjoy life. But Buddhism teaches something terrifying. The more you worry, the less you actually live. One day your life will end, and you will realize most of your suffering was created inside your own mind. In this video, you will discover powerful Buddhist lessons that will help you stop overthinking, let go of unnecessary fear, and finally experience the peace life has been trying to give you all along. 1. Most worry comes from trying to control life. One of the biggest reasons people suffer mentally is because they desperately try to control everything around them. They want certainty about the future. They want guarantees that nothing painful will happen. They want every situation to go exactly according to their expectations. But Buddhism teaches that life has never been fully controllable. The more attached you become to controlling every outcome, the more anxious your mind becomes. Because reality constantly changes, people change, circumstances change, plans fail, unexpected problems appear, life moves in ways nobody can completely predict. Many people constantly think about what-if situations. What if something goes wrong? What if people leave? What if failure happens? Their mind keeps creating fear about the future, even during moments when nothing bad is actually happening. Instead of enjoying life peacefully, they mentally prepare for disasters that may never even come. The truth is, no human being can control every part of life. No amount of worrying can guarantee safety, prevent pain, or make the future perfectly predictable. In fact, the more you try to control everything, the more emotionally exhausted you become. Your mind never relaxes because it is always searching for problems to solve before they even exist. Buddhism teaches that peace begins when you stop fighting uncertainty. You still work hard. You still plan wisely, but you stop demanding total control over life. You accept that some things will always remain uncertain, and that is part of being human. 2. Worry steals the present moment. Most people are physically alive, but mentally they are somewhere else. Their body is in the present, but their mind is trapped in the future. They spend their days worrying about problems that have not happened yet, instead of fully experiencing the life happening in front of them. When they are eating, they are thinking about stress. When they are with family, they are worrying about work. When they finally have time to relax, their mind keeps replaying fears, responsibilities, and future uncertainties. Because of this, they rarely feel true peace, even during good moments. Buddhism teaches that the present moment is the only place where life truly exists. The past is already gone. The future has not arrived yet. But worry keeps pulling people away from the only moment they actually have. Many people believe constant worrying helps them stay prepared for life. But in reality, excessive worry often destroys emotional energy and steals happiness from ordinary moments. It becomes impossible to enjoy life when the mind is constantly expecting something bad to happen. Think about how many beautiful moments anxiety has already stolen from your life. Peaceful mornings, conversations with loved ones, quiet evenings, small moments that could have brought happiness, but your mind was too busy worrying to fully experience them. Buddhism teaches that peace begins when you bring your attention back to the present moment. The more present you become, the calmer your mind becomes. And the calmer your mind becomes, the more alive you finally start to feel. 3. Most problems exist more in the mind than in reality. One of the biggest reasons people suffer emotionally is because the human mind has a habit of turning small problems into massive mental burdens. A single negative thought can grow into hours of anxiety. One small mistake can create days of self-hatred. One uncertain situation can make the mind imagine the worst possible outcome. Buddhism teaches that much of human suffering is created not by reality itself, but by the stories the mind continuously creates around reality. Many people suffer more in their imagination than they do in real life. Before something bad even happens, the mind already creates fear, panic, stress, and emotional exhaustion. A person sends a message and immediately begins overthinking why someone has not replied yet. A small disagreement happens, and suddenly they imagine losing the relationship forever. One problem appears at work, and the mind instantly jumps toward failure, embarrassment, or disaster. The mind constantly creates what-if scenarios. What if everything goes wrong? What if people reject me? What if I fail? What if I lose everything? These thoughts repeat over and over until the body itself becomes exhausted. Anxiety grows stronger, sleep becomes difficult, and peace slowly disappears. But Buddhism teaches something very powerful. Thoughts are not always reality. Just because the mind creates a fearful story does not mean that story is true. Most worries never happen the way people imagine them. Yet people mentally torture themselves as if the disaster has already arrived. This is why overthinking becomes so dangerous. The mind keeps creating suffering long before real suffering even exists. Instead of facing reality calmly, people fight imaginary battles inside their own head every single day. Many people believe they are preparing themselves by worrying constantly, but in reality, they are only draining their emotional energy. A worried mind cannot think clearly. It becomes emotionally reactive, fearful, and exhausted. Even small situations begin to feel overwhelming because the mind has trained itself to expect danger everywhere. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because mindfulness helps people observe their thoughts without becoming controlled by them. Instead of believing every fearful thought immediately, you learn to step back and watch the mind calmly. You begin realizing that many thoughts are temporary mental noise, not facts. The moment you stop feeding every negative thought with fear, your mind slowly becomes quieter. You stop turning every problem into a catastrophe. You stop creating unnecessary suffering inside yourself. And for the first time in a long time, life starts feeling lighter instead of mentally overwhelming all the time. 4. Life is shorter than you think. One of the deepest teachings in Buddhism is the understanding that life is temporary. Nothing lasts forever. Every person, every moment, every season of life eventually changes and disappears. But most people live as if they have unlimited time. They constantly postpone happiness, peace, rest, and joy, because they believe there will always be another day to enjoy life later. People spend years trapped in stress and anxiety, telling themselves they will finally relax after they become successful, after they solve every problem, or after life becomes perfect. But life never becomes completely free from problems. New responsibilities appear, new challenges arrive, and while people keep waiting for the perfect time to finally feel happy, life quietly continues passing by. Buddhism teaches that one of the greatest illusions humans have is believing they have more time than they actually do. Days slowly turn into years. People get older without realizing how fast time is moving. One moment you are young and full of energy, and suddenly entire chapters of your life are gone forever. Many people only realize this truth when it is too late. They look back at their life and notice how much time anxiety stole from them. They spent years worrying about things that never truly mattered. They sacrificed peaceful moments because their mind was always trapped in fear about the future. Think about how many beautiful moments people miss because of worry. A peaceful morning becomes stressful because the mind is already thinking about tomorrow. Time with loved ones becomes distracted because the mind keeps replaying problems. Even moments of success feel empty because anxiety immediately creates new fears to focus on. Worry has a dangerous way of stealing the present moment without people noticing it. Life keeps moving, but the mind never fully experiences it. Many people are physically alive, but mentally absent from their own life almost every single day. Buddhism reminds us that death is not something distant. It is part of life itself. Every human being eventually reaches the end of their journey. And when that moment comes, nobody wishes they spent more time worrying. Nobody wishes they overthought every possible problem more deeply. Nobody wishes they sacrificed their peace for unnecessary fear. Most people will regret not living more fully. They will regret the moments they failed to appreciate. They will regret constantly delaying happiness while waiting for life to become perfect. This is why Buddhism teaches mindfulness and presence. Life is happening right now, not next year, not after every problem disappears. Right now. The ability to enjoy simple moments, appreciate small blessings, and remain mentally present is one of the greatest forms of wisdom a person can develop. The truth is, life is fragile. Nobody knows how much time they truly have left. Tomorrow is never guaranteed. This does not mean you should live in fear. It means you should stop wasting your precious life, trapped inside unnecessary worry. The more aware you become of how short life truly is, the less interested you become in overthinking every little problem. You begin valuing peace more. You begin appreciating ordinary moments more deeply. Small things start feeling meaningful again because you realize nothing lasts forever. A quiet evening, a healthy body, a conversation with someone you love, the feeling of sunlight, the sound of rain. These simple moments are actually life itself, but worried minds often miss them completely because they are too busy mentally preparing for future pain. Buddhism teaches that a wise person remembers the temporary nature of life, not to become depressed but to become awake, to stop wasting time, to stop allowing anxiety to steal their remaining years, to stop postponing happiness until someday in the future, because one day your future will run out. And when that day comes, you will realize that peace, presence, love, and simple moments were always far more important than all the unnecessary worries that once consumed your mind. 5. Peace comes from acceptance, not resistance. One of the biggest reasons people suffer emotionally is because they constantly fight reality instead of accepting it. They resist change. They resist pain. They resist endings. They resist uncertainty. Deep inside, they want life to happen exactly the way they planned it. And when life moves differently, their mind becomes filled with frustration, fear, anger, and emotional exhaustion. Buddhism teaches that suffering becomes heavier when the mind refuses to accept what already exists. Pain itself is often unavoidable, but mental resistance multiplies that pain. Instead of calmly facing difficult situations, people mentally argue with reality over and over again. Many people spend years asking questions like, why did this happen to me? Why did they leave? Why is life unfair? Why can't things go back to the way they were? The mind keeps fighting situations that cannot be changed anymore. But no amount of resistance can undo reality. The more the mind refuses to accept what has already happened, the more suffering continues growing inside. For example, some people cannot accept that relationships change. They hold on to people who already emotionally left long ago. They replay memories every day, hoping reality will somehow become different. Others cannot accept failure, rejection, or disappointment. They become trapped inside bitterness because life did not follow their expectations. But Buddhism teaches that change is part of life itself. Everything changes. People change. Emotions change. Situations change. Nothing stays permanent forever. The moment you expect life to remain stable forever, suffering begins because reality will always continue moving. Acceptance does not mean weakness. It does not mean you stop trying to improve your life. It simply means you stop emotionally fighting things you cannot control anymore. You stop wasting your energy arguing with reality internally. A person who accepts life calmly suffers far less than someone who constantly resists every painful experience. Because acceptance creates emotional space inside the mind. It allows healing to begin. It allows clarity to return. Many people think accepting pain means giving up, but the opposite is often true. Acceptance is what gives people the strength to move forward. The moment you stop denying reality, you can finally start dealing with it wisely. When something painful happens, the mind often creates additional suffering by refusing to let go. Instead of experiencing pain temporarily, people keep reopening emotional wounds through endless overthinking. They replay conversations. They imagine different outcomes. They obsess over what should have happened instead of accepting what actually happened. This is why some people stay emotionally stuck for years. Not because the pain itself lasted forever, but because the mind continuously resisted reality. Buddhism teaches that peace begins the moment you stop mentally fighting life all the time. You begin understanding that not everything will go according to your plans. Some chapters will end unexpectedly. Some people will disappoint you. Some situations will hurt deeply, but life itself is not the enemy. The more you accept the temporary and unpredictable nature of life, the calmer your mind becomes. You stop reacting emotionally to every difficulty. You stop collapsing every time life changes direction. Instead, you develop emotional flexibility and inner strength. Acceptance also teaches patience. Sometimes healing takes time. Sometimes clarity comes slowly. Sometimes life removes certain people or situations because they were never meant to stay forever. A peaceful mind understands this and learns to let life flow naturally instead of trying to force everything to remain the same. Many people exhaust themselves trying to control things that were never fully theirs to control. They try to control people's feelings, life outcomes, the future, and circumstances beyond their power. But Buddhism teaches that real peace comes when you focus only on what you can control: your actions, your mindset, your responses, and your inner peace. The moment you stop resisting reality so aggressively, life becomes lighter emotionally. Your mind becomes quieter. You stop carrying unnecessary mental battles every day. And slowly, you realize that peace was never created by controlling life perfectly. It was created by learning how to accept life wisely. 6. Happiness cannot exist inside constant fear. One of the saddest ways people waste their lives is by constantly postponing happiness. They keep telling themselves they will finally relax and enjoy life after everything becomes perfect. After they earn more money, after they solve every problem, after people finally understand them, after the future feels safe and predictable. But Buddhism teaches that this way of thinking traps people inside endless suffering, because life will never become completely free from uncertainty. There will always be another problem to solve, another responsibility, another fear, another challenge waiting ahead. If happiness depends on reaching a perfect future where nothing goes wrong, many people will spend their entire lives emotionally exhausted and never truly experience peace. Fear has a powerful ability to steal joy from ordinary life. Even when nothing terrible is happening, the mind keeps searching for danger. Many people live as if disaster is always about to arrive. They constantly overthink small situations. They expect rejection before it happens. They prepare themselves emotionally for failure long before failure even exists. Because of this, they rarely feel fully relaxed. Their body may be resting, but their mind remains tense all the time. Even during peaceful moments, anxiety quietly continues operating in the background. Buddhism teaches that a fearful mind can never fully enjoy life because fear keeps attention trapped in imaginary future pain. Instead of experiencing what is happening now, the mind keeps asking, what if everything goes wrong? What if I lose this? What if something bad happens tomorrow? The problem is that fear creates suffering before reality even does. People suffer mentally over possibilities, not actual events. Many fears never even become real, yet the emotional damage anxiety creates inside the mind can last for years. A person trapped in constant fear slowly loses the ability to appreciate life. Beautiful moments stop feeling beautiful because the mind is distracted by stress. Simple pleasures stop bringing peace because anxiety keeps interrupting every experience. Even moments of success feel temporary because fear immediately creates new worries to replace old ones. This is why some people appear to have everything externally but still feel emotionally miserable internally. They may have money, opportunities, relationships, or achievements, but their mind never rests. Fear constantly whispers that something will eventually go wrong. So instead of enjoying what they already have, they live in permanent emotional tension. Buddhism teaches that true happiness is not created by controlling life perfectly. True happiness is created by calming the mind. A peaceful mind experiences life differently. Small things begin to feel meaningful again. Ordinary moments become enough. A simple meal feels enjoyable. Silence feels comforting instead of uncomfortable. Nature feels healing. Rest no longer creates guilt. But But fearful people often cannot experience these simple forms of happiness because their mind never leaves survival mode. They are always mentally preparing for danger. Their nervous system becomes addicted to stress. Over time, anxiety starts feeling normal to them, even though it is quietly destroying their peace. Many people also confuse worry with responsibility. They believe that constantly stressing about everything means they are being mature, prepared, or productive. But Buddhism teaches that unnecessary worry is not wisdom. Wisdom allows a person to stay calm while dealing with life responsibly. Fear only weakens clarity and drains emotional energy. Think about how many moments fear has already stolen from people's lives. How many opportunities were avoided because of anxiety? How many peaceful days were ruined by overthinking? How many relationships became damaged because fear created insecurity, jealousy, or emotional dependence? Fear does not only affect the future, it destroys the present moment too. A fearful mind often becomes emotionally dependent on certainty. It constantly wants reassurance from life, from people, and from circumstances. But Buddhism teaches that certainty itself is temporary. Nothing in life remains fully stable forever. The more attached you become to needing perfect certainty, the more anxious your life becomes. This is why inner peace becomes so important. Peace allows a person to live even when life feels uncertain. It allows someone to enjoy the present moment without constantly demanding guarantees about tomorrow. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because mindfulness interrupts fear. When you become fully present, the mind slowly stops running endlessly into imaginary future disasters. You begin noticing that in this exact moment you are okay. Your breathing slows down. Your body relaxes. The mind becomes quieter. Most fear exists inside thoughts about the future, but life itself only exists in the present. Many people are alive physically, but mentally they are trapped in future fears every single day. They replay worst-case scenarios repeatedly until they emotionally exhaust themselves. Their mind becomes so addicted to overthinking that peace starts feeling unfamiliar. But Buddhism teaches that peace is your natural state once the mind stops feeding unnecessary fear. Fear also creates emotional blindness. It makes people overlook the blessings already present in their lives. A worried person often cannot appreciate what they already have, because their attention remains focused on what could go wrong next. This is why gratitude becomes difficult for anxious people. Their mind constantly searches for missing things instead of appreciating present blessings. They become emotionally trapped in scarcity, fear, and dissatisfaction, even when life still contains beauty around them. A calm mind notices life differently. It notices peaceful mornings. It notices laughter, it notices fresh air, it notices quiet moments, it notices love, it notices rest, it notices the beauty of simply being alive. But fear keeps the mind distracted from these things. Buddhism teaches that happiness is not hidden somewhere far away in the future. It exists in your relationship with the present moment. A peaceful mind can experience happiness even during imperfect circumstances because it is no longer constantly fighting reality. This does not mean life becomes painless. Buddhism never promises a life without difficulty. Pain will still exist sometimes. Disappointment will still happen. Loss will still happen. But suffering becomes lighter when the mind stops creating additional fear around every painful experience. Fear often creates more suffering than reality itself. For example, many people suffer from things that have not even happened yet. They imagine rejection before speaking. They expect betrayal before trusting. They fear failure before even trying. Their mind convinces them to emotionally experience pain before life itself has even moved. This is why fear quietly destroys confidence, peace, opportunities, relationships, and emotional freedom. The more fear controls your mind, the smaller your life becomes. People stop taking risks. They stop enjoying life. They stop trusting others. They stop trusting themselves. They stop being present. They stop feeling alive. Buddhism teaches that freedom begins when you stop allowing fear to control your entire existence. You begin realizing that life was never meant to be lived in permanent anxiety. Human beings were not created to spend every day mentally preparing for disaster. You cannot fully enjoy life while constantly expecting life to hurt you. The mind becomes peaceful when it accepts uncertainty instead of fearing it. It understands that no amount of overthinking can guarantee safety forever. It understands that worrying excessively does not prevent pain. It only steals peace before pain even arrives. This realization changes the way a person lives. Instead of obsessing over the future, they start appreciating today. Instead of fearing every possibility, they begin trusting themselves more deeply. Instead of mentally surviving every day, they start emotionally living again. Buddhism teaches that happiness grows naturally inside a calm mind, not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because the mind finally stops creating unnecessary suffering all the time. The less fear controls you, the more freedom you feel internally. The quieter the mind becomes, the more beautiful ordinary life starts to feel. And the more present you become, the more you realize how much happiness anxiety has been stealing from you for years. Many people wait their entire life for happiness, while fear quietly consumes all their days. But life is happening right now. And the moment you stop allowing fear to dominate your mind, you finally begin experiencing the peace, clarity, and emotional freedom your soul has been searching for all along. 7. The more present you become, the more alive you feel. One of the greatest tragedies of modern life is that most people are never fully present. Their body exists in the current moment, but their mind is somewhere else almost all the time. They are thinking about tomorrow while ignoring today. They are replaying old pain while life quietly passes in front of them. They are physically alive, but mentally disconnected from their own existence. Buddhism teaches that the present moment is the only place where real life actually exists. The past no longer exists. The future has not happened yet. Yet most human suffering comes from mentally living in those two places, instead of fully experiencing the moment that is happening right now. Many people spend their entire life trapped inside their thoughts. Even during peaceful moments, the mind keeps running endlessly. It worries about the future. It regrets the past. It compares itself to others. It creates imaginary problems. It's at search for danger. Because of this, many people rarely experience true inner peace. The mind becomes so noisy that people forget what it feels like to simply exist calmly. Think about how often people miss beautiful moments because their mind is distracted. A person sits with family, but barely listens because they are thinking about work stress. Someone watches a sunset, but cannot enjoy it because their mind is trapped in anxiety about tomorrow. People walk through life physically present, but emotionally absent. Buddhism teaches mindfulness, because mindfulness reconnects people back to life itself. It teaches awareness of breathing, thoughts, emotions, surroundings, and ordinary moments. It teaches people to stop mentally escaping reality all the time. Most people believe happiness exists somewhere in the future. They tell themselves, "I will finally feel peaceful when I become successful. I will finally relax after I solve all my problems. I will finally enjoy life later." But later never truly arrives because the mind always creates another problem to focus on. This is why so many people remain emotionally exhausted, even after achieving things they once believed would make them happy. The mind is constantly chasing the next solution instead of appreciating the present moment. Buddhism teaches that peace is not found by escaping life. Peace is found by fully entering life with awareness. When you become present, ordinary moments begin feeling meaningful again. Simple things become enough. The sound of rain becomes calming. A peaceful morning feels beautiful. Silence no longer feels empty. Even breathing slowly begins to feel healing. But people trapped in constant overthinking rarely experience these things because their attention is always somewhere else. Modern life also trains people to become mentally distracted all the time. Endless noise, constant stimulation, social media, stress, pressure and comparison keep the mind permanently restless. Many people have become addicted to mental chaos without realizing it. Silence feels uncomfortable to them because they are no longer used to sitting calmly with themselves. This is why many people cannot relax even when they finally have free time. Their body stops working, but the mind continues racing endlessly. Thoughts keep moving. Worries keep appearing. Fear keeps returning. The mind becomes trapped in survival mode, even when there is no immediate danger. Buddhism teaches that a restless mind creates suffering because it never allows a person to experience peace fully. A calm mind experiences life very differently. A calm person notices small blessings. They appreciate ordinary moments. They feel gratitude more deeply. They stop rushing through life unconsciously. They stop needing constant distraction. They stop treating every moment like an emergency. The more present you become, the more emotionally alive you feel. Many people think being alive simply means existing physically, but Buddhism teaches that true living means awareness. It means fully experiencing your life instead of constantly escaping from it mentally. When the mind becomes calmer, your relationship with life changes completely. Food tastes better because you are actually paying attention while eating. Conversations feel more meaningful because you are truly listening. Nature feels peaceful because your mind is quiet enough to notice its beauty. Even silence starts feeling comforting instead of uncomfortable. But worried minds miss these experiences constantly because anxiety keeps pulling attention toward imaginary future problems. One of the biggest reasons people feel emotionally empty is because they are never mentally connected to the present moment. They are always somewhere else psychologically. Their thoughts continuously steal their attention from life itself. Buddhism teaches that mindfulness brings people back home to themselves. Mindfulness is not about becoming perfect. It is not about forcing the mind to stop thinking forever. It is simply the practice of becoming aware instead of unconscious, aware of thoughts, aware of emotions, aware of the present moment. The more awareness grows, the less control anxiety has over the mind. Many people suffer because they automatically believe every thought their mind creates. If fear appears, they immediately panic. If negative thoughts appear, they emotionally collapse. But mindfulness teaches people to observe thoughts without becoming controlled by them. You begin realizing that thoughts come and go like clouds passing through the sky. Some thoughts are useful, some are meaningless, some are created entirely by fear and overthinking. The moment you stop treating every thought like reality, your mind slowly becomes quieter. This is why presence becomes so powerful. Presence interrupts mental suffering. When your full attention enters the current moment, fear loses some of its power, because fear usually depends on future imagination. Anxiety needs the future to survive. But presence brings attention back to what is actually happening right now. Right now you are breathing. Right now you are alive. Right now this moment exists. Most people overlook this because they are mentally trapped somewhere else. Buddhism teaches that life itself is happening in small moments people often ignore. Life is not only big achievements, success, or future goals. Life is also ordinary mornings, peaceful evenings, conversations, rest, nature, silence, laughter, and presence. But when the mind is permanently distracted, people fail to experience these moments deeply. Many people reach the end of life realizing they were never truly present for most of it. Their mind was always rushing somewhere else, always worried, always distracted, always emotionally unavailable. This is why mindfulness becomes such an important practice in Buddhism. It protects people from unconsciously losing their entire life to overthinking. The present moment is where peace exists. The present moment is where gratitude exists. The present moment is where life exists. The more present you become, the less interested you become in unnecessary mental drama. Small problems stop controlling your emotions so easily. You stop reacting impulsively to every situation. You stop creating emotional suffering from every negative thought. A present mind becomes more stable emotionally. This does not mean problems disappear completely. Life will still contain pain sometimes. Difficult situations will still happen. But presence changes how you experience those situations internally. Instead of panicking immediately, you become calmer. Instead of overthinking endlessly, you become more aware. Instead of emotionally drowning inside fear, you stay connected to reality. This inner stability creates tremendous peace. Buddhism teaches that suffering often grows because the mind continuously resists the present moment. People mentally fight reality instead of accepting what already exists. They wish things were different. They replay the past. They fear the future. Because of this, the mind rarely rests. But presence teaches acceptance. It teaches you to experience life as it is, instead of constantly demanding that reality become different before you allow yourself to feel peace. Many people believe happiness comes from controlling external circumstances perfectly. Buddhism teaches the opposite. Peace begins inside the mind itself. A calm mind can experience happiness even during imperfect situations. A grateful mind can experience beauty in ordinary moments. A present mind can experience peace without needing life to become perfect first. This understanding changes everything. Suddenly, life no longer feels like a constant race. You stop obsessing over every future outcome. You stop mentally running from moment to moment. You begin slowing down internally. And when this happens, something beautiful begins returning to your life. Emotional clarity. The quieter the mind becomes, the clearer life starts to feel. You begin understanding what truly matters. You stop wasting energy on meaningless things. You stop allowing fear to dominate your entire existence. You stop treating every inconvenience like a disaster. Presence reconnects you to reality instead of mental illusion. Many people are exhausted not because life itself is impossible, but because their mind never stops fighting, fearing, comparing, worrying, and overthinking. Their body becomes tired because the mind never rests. But Buddhism teaches that inner peace becomes possible the moment you stop feeding unnecessary mental noise constantly. The more present you become, the more freedom you feel emotionally. You stop needing constant distraction. You stop fearing silence. You stop depending on external chaos to feel alive. You begin enjoying simplicity again. This is why many spiritually peaceful people appear calmer than everyone around them. It is not because their life is perfect. It is because their mind is no longer trapped in endless unconscious thinking all the time. They learned how to be present. And presence changes the entire human experience. The present moment becomes enough. Ordinary life becomes beautiful again. Peace stops feeling distant. The mind becomes lighter. The heart becomes calmer. And slowly, you begin realizing something most people never understand. Life was never being stolen by reality itself. It was being stolen by constant mental absence, by overthinking, by fear, by endless distraction, by emotional noise, by never truly being here. Buddhism teaches that awakening begins the moment you finally return to the present moment fully. Because when you are fully present, life no longer feels like something you are trying to survive constantly. It finally feels like something you are truly living. 8. Worry slowly disconnects you from yourself. One of the most dangerous effects of constant worry is that it slowly disconnects a person from their true self. At first, anxiety may seem small, a few fearful thoughts, a little stress about the future, some overthinking before sleep. But over time, constant worry begins changing the way a person thinks, feels, reacts, and experiences life. Buddhism teaches that the mind shapes human experience. Whatever constantly fills the mind eventually shapes the entire emotional state of a person. When the mind becomes filled with fear every day, life itself begins feeling heavy, exhausting, and emotionally unsafe. Many people no longer even remember what true inner peace feels like, because anxiety has become normal to them. They wake up already stressed. Their mind immediately starts racing. They overthink conversations. They fear the future. They mentally replay problems repeatedly. Even during moments of rest, their thoughts refuse to slow down. Eventually, this constant mental noise becomes so familiar that people start believing this is simply how life is supposed to feel. But Buddhism teaches that the human mind was never meant to live in permanent fear. A worried mind slowly disconnects people from their emotions too. Many anxious people become emotionally numb without realizing it. Because the mind stays trapped in survival mode for so long, they stop fully experiencing joy, gratitude, excitement, peace, and emotional connection. Their nervous system becomes exhausted. Even when something good happens, they struggle to enjoy it completely, because anxiety immediately searches for the next problem. Their mind says, "What if this happiness disappears? What if something goes wrong? What if I lose this?" So instead of relaxing into the present moment, they remain emotionally guarded all the time. This emotional disconnection becomes extremely painful over time. People start feeling empty inside without understanding why. They lose connection with themselves. They lose connection with life. They lose connection with peace. Buddhism teaches that when the mind becomes too attached to fear, a person forgets how to simply exist naturally. Their thoughts dominate their entire experience. They stop listening to themselves deeply because fear becomes louder than inner wisdom. This is why many people constantly feel mentally exhausted, even when they are not physically doing much. Their body may be sitting still, but internally the mind never stops working. Worry becomes a full-time emotional burden. The mind keeps predicting problems, analyzing every possibility, preparing for disasters, replaying painful memories, creating imaginary fears. This endless mental activity drains emotional energy slowly every single day. Many people believe physical exhaustion is the main reason they feel tired. But often, emotional exhaustion is even heavier. Carrying constant fear inside the mind can make life itself feel overwhelming. Buddhism teaches that peace disappears when the mind becomes overcrowded with unnecessary thinking. A peaceful person is not someone whose life is perfect. A peaceful person is someone whose mind is no longer constantly attacking itself. But anxious people often become their own source of suffering. They criticize themselves constantly. They doubt themselves constantly. They fear failure constantly. They overthink every mistake. They compare themselves to others. They imagine rejection before it even happens. Eventually, this creates deep emotional distance between a person and their authentic self. Instead of living naturally, they start living defensively. They become afraid to relax, afraid to trust, afraid to slow down, afraid to be vulnerable, afraid to enjoy life too much because they expect pain to eventually arrive. This is one of the saddest consequences of worry. It steals emotional freedom. Buddhism teaches that attachment to fear creates suffering because fear constantly pulls people away from the present moment and away from themselves. The mind becomes trapped in protection mode all the time. But human beings cannot truly feel alive while emotionally hiding from life constantly. Many anxious people are not actually living anymore. They are surviving psychologically. There is a huge difference between surviving and living. Surviving means the mind constantly searches for danger. Living means the mind becomes calm enough to experience life fully. Surviving creates emotional tension. Living creates emotional openness. Surviving fears uncertainty. Living accepts uncertainty naturally. Most people spend years surviving mentally without realizing how disconnected they have become from themselves. Buddhism teaches that awareness heals this disconnection. The moment you slow down and observe your mind honestly, you begin noticing how much unnecessary fear controls your emotional state. You notice how often your thoughts create suffering without any real danger being present. You realize that many of your fears are habits, not reality. This awareness becomes life-changing because it allows you to finally separate yourself from the constant noise inside the mind. You begin understanding, I am not every fearful thought I experience. I do not have to believe every anxious prediction. I do not have to live in permanent mental tension. The moment this understanding begins growing, inner peace slowly starts returning. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because mindfulness reconnects people with themselves again. When the mind becomes quiet, something beautiful happens. You start hearing your own inner voice more clearly. You begin understanding your emotions more deeply. You begin feeling present inside your own life again. Instead of constantly reacting automatically to fear, you become more conscious emotionally. You stop panicking over every situation. You stop assuming the worst immediately. You stop mentally attacking yourself constantly. And slowly, your relationship with yourself begins healing. This healing is important because many people spend their entire life disconnected from their own inner world. They know how to stay busy, they know how to distract themselves, but they do not know how to sit peacefully with themselves without anxiety taking over. Silence feels uncomfortable to them because silence exposes the chaos inside the mind. This is why many people constantly seek distraction: phones, noise, social media, entertainment, work, endless stimulation. Not because they truly enjoy all of it, but because distraction temporarily helps them escape their own anxious thinking. But Buddhism teaches that true healing does not come from endless distraction. Healing comes from awareness and inner stillness. The more connected you become with yourself internally, the less power worry has over your life. You begin trusting yourself more deeply. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop depending entirely on external validation to feel emotionally safe. This creates tremendous inner freedom. A person deeply connected with themselves does not collapse emotionally every time life becomes uncertain. They remain calmer internally because their peace no longer depends entirely on external conditions. Buddhism teaches that inner peace is not created by controlling life perfectly. It is created by developing awareness and emotional balance inside the mind itself. The more disconnected people become from themselves, the more fear controls them. The more connected people become with themselves, the calmer life starts feeling. This is why mindfulness practices in Buddhism focus so deeply on awareness of breathing, thoughts, emotions, and presence. These practices slowly reconnect people back to their own inner experience. Breathing becomes slower, thoughts become quieter, emotions become clearer, the mind becomes lighter, and for the first time in a long time, people stop feeling emotionally lost inside themselves. Many people search for peace everywhere externally while ignoring the chaos inside their own mind. But Buddhism teaches that peace begins internally first. No external success can permanently calm a fearful mind. No amount of money can completely remove anxiety. No relationship can fully heal a person constantly disconnected from themselves internally. True peace begins when the mind stops fighting itself constantly. This is why self-awareness becomes so important. The more aware you become of your thoughts, fears, emotional habits, and inner patterns, the less unconscious control they have over you. You stop becoming a prisoner of your own mind. Instead of reacting automatically to fear, you begin responding more calmly and wisely. You begin noticing how often anxiety exaggerates problems. You notice how fear creates imaginary suffering. You notice how much energy overthinking steals from daily life. And once you truly see this clearly, something inside you changes. You no longer want to waste your life trapped in endless mental suffering. You begin valuing peace more deeply. You begin protecting your energy more carefully. You begin slowing down internally. Most importantly, you begin reconnecting with yourself again. Buddhism teaches that happiness becomes possible when the mind returns to balance. Not perfect balance, not a life without problems, but a calmer, more aware relationship with your own mind. Because the truth is, many people are not destroyed by life itself. They are destroyed by constant mental conflict inside themselves. Their mind becomes their prison. But the moment awareness enters the mind, healing begins. The moment presence returns, life starts feeling real again. The moment fear loses control, emotional freedom begins returning. The moment you reconnect with yourself, peace no longer feels impossible. And perhaps this is one of the deepest truths Buddhism teaches. The greatest relationship you will ever have is the relationship with your own mind. If the mind is constantly filled with fear, life will always feel heavy. But if the mind becomes peaceful, aware, and present, even ordinary life begins feeling beautiful again. Because real peace was never hidden somewhere outside of you. It was waiting underneath all the noise, fear, worry, and mental chaos that had disconnected you from yourself for so long. 9. The more you worry, the faster life slips away. One of the most painful truths about human life is that time never stops moving. Every day quietly disappears whether people notice it or not. Every morning becomes night. Every year passes faster than the last. And while life continues moving forward, millions of people spend most of their existence trapped inside fear, stress, anxiety, and endless overthinking. Buddhism teaches that life is precious precisely because it is temporary. Every human being receives only a limited amount of time on this earth. Yet many people unknowingly waste that time mentally suffering over things they cannot control. They worry about the future constantly. They replay the past constantly. They overthink small problems constantly. They live in fear of failure, rejection, loss, uncertainty, and pain. And while all this mental suffering continues inside the mind, life itself quietly keeps passing by. This is one of the greatest tragedies of worry. It does not only steal peace, it steals time. Many people believe they are simply thinking carefully about life. But there is a huge difference between thoughtful awareness and endless worrying. Awareness helps you live wisely. Worry traps you in mental suffering that never ends. The mind becomes addicted to fear. Even when life becomes peaceful for a moment, anxious people often struggle to relax because the mind immediately searches for another problem to focus on. If one fear disappears, another quickly replaces it. This creates a life where peace never truly lasts. Buddhism teaches that attachment to worry creates continuous suffering because the mind becomes trapped in psychological fear instead of reality itself. Most people are not suffering from the present moment. They are suffering from thoughts about the future or memories of the past. Think about how many years people lose to anxiety. Years spent worrying about what others think. Years spent fearing failure. Years spent emotionally exhausted over situations that never even happened. Years spent mentally preparing for disasters that only existed inside imagination. Then suddenly, life feels shorter than expected. People wake up one day shocked by how fast time disappeared. Childhood feels distant. Youth disappears quickly. Parents age, relationships change. Entire chapters of life quietly end forever. This is why Buddhism constantly reminds people of impermanence, not to create fear, but to awaken awareness. To help people understand that life is not endless, and because of that, every moment matters deeply. A worried mind rarely understands this fully, because anxiety keeps attention trapped in survival mode. Instead of appreciating life, the mind keeps postponing happiness. I will relax later. I will enjoy life once everything feels stable. I will finally be happy after I solve all my problems. But problems never fully disappear. Life will always contain uncertainty. There will always be challenges. There will always be uncomfortable situations sometimes. If happiness depends on perfect circumstances, many people will spend their entire life waiting to finally feel peace. Buddhism teaches that peace must be created internally, not postponed endlessly into the future. Many people unknowingly sacrifice today trying to protect tomorrow. They become so obsessed with future outcomes that they completely miss the present moment. Even beautiful experiences become overshadowed by overthinking. A peaceful evening becomes ruined by anxiety about work. A vacation becomes stressful because the mind keeps worrying. Time with loved ones becomes emotionally distracted because thoughts never slow down. People are physically present but mentally absent from their own life. This is why worry becomes so destructive. It disconnects people from the experience of being alive. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because mindfulness reconnects people back to life itself. It reminds people that happiness is not hidden somewhere in the future. It exists inside awareness of the present moment. Most people believe our life is made only of major achievements and important events. But life is actually made of ordinary moments repeated every day. Morning sunlight, laughter, peaceful silence, conversations, breathing, nature rest, love, stillness. These small moments are life itself. But anxious minds often overlook them completely, because fear constantly pulls attention toward imaginary future pain. This creates emotional blindness. People stop noticing beauty around them because their thoughts become louder than reality itself. Buddhism teaches that suffering grows when the mind loses connection with the present moment. A person may physically survive for many years, while emotionally never truly living at all. There are people who reach old age realizing they spent most of life worrying instead of experiencing life deeply. They worried during their youth. They worried during success. They worried during peaceful moments. They worried during relationships. They worried during opportunities. And before they realized it, time was gone. This realization becomes extremely painful, because time is the one thing no human being can recover. Money can return. Opportunities can return. Certain relationships can even return sometimes. But lost time never returns. This is why Buddhism places such deep importance on awareness and presence. A mindful person understands that every moment carries value because life itself is temporary. The more deeply you understand impermanence, the less interested you become in wasting your life trapped inside unnecessary mental suffering. Small problems stop feeling as important. Petty conflicts lose meaning. Constant comparison loses power. Fear begins weakening. You start realizing how much energy anxiety has stolen from your existence. Many people spend their whole life mentally preparing to live someday in the future. But someday eventually becomes old age. Then regret appears. Buddhism teaches that wisdom means waking up before regret arrives. A wise person understands that life is fragile. People leave unexpectedly. Health changes unexpectedly. Circumstances change quickly. Nothing remains permanent forever. But instead of creating fear, this understanding creates gratitude. Gratitude for simple moments. Gratitude for breathing. Gratitude for loved ones. Gratitude for being alive today. Worry and gratitude cannot fully exist together. A worried mind focuses on what could go wrong. A grateful mind notices what still exists right now. This is why Buddhism encourages awareness of ordinary life. When the mind becomes present, life stops feeling empty. Simple moments become meaningful again. Peace no longer feels distant. The heart becomes softer. The mind becomes calmer. But when anxiety dominates the mind constantly, life starts feeling rushed, heavy, and emotionally exhausting. Many people today are moving through life too quickly to even experience it properly. They rush while eating, rush while speaking, rush while resting, rush while living. Even when there is no emergency, the nervous system remains tense, because the mind has become addicted to constant mental stimulation and fear. Buddhism teaches slowing down because slowing down allows awareness to return. The slower and calmer the mind becomes, the more deeply life can actually be experienced. This changes everything internally. You begin noticing beauty again. You begin appreciating people more deeply. You begin feeling emotionally connected to life again. You stop needing constant chaos and distraction to feel alive. Most importantly, you stop wasting so much time mentally suffering over things that may never happen. This creates emotional freedom. A person free from constant worry experiences life differently. They still face problems sometimes. They still experience pain sometimes. But they no longer allow fear to steal every peaceful moment from them. They understand something deeply important. Life is too short to spend most of it trapped inside anxiety. This realization becomes powerful because it changes priority completely. You stop wanting unnecessary drama. You stop obsessing over every opinion. You stop mentally torturing yourself over every possible future outcome. You begin valuing peace more than fear, presence more than overthinking, life more than survival. Buddhism teaches that the present moment is not something small or unimportant. The present moment is your entire life, not tomorrow, not next year, not someday, right now. This exact moment is part of your life story. And once this moment disappears, it never returns again. Many people fail to understand this until life becomes painful or temporary things begin disappearing from their world. Only then do they realize how precious ordinary moments truly were. This is why mindfulness becomes so important. Mindfulness protects people from unconsciously losing their life to distraction, fear, and endless mental suffering. It teaches people to fully arrive inside their own existence, to breathe consciously, to listen deeply, to appreciate small moments, to stop rushing through life unconsciously, to stop postponing peace endlessly. The more present you become, the slower life begins to feel emotionally. Not because time itself changes, but because awareness deepens your experience of living. A distracted life passes quickly. A mindful life feels meaningful. This is why many spiritually peaceful people often appear calmer than everyone else around them. They are not constantly mentally running toward the future. They are connected to the present moment more deeply. And because of this, they actually experience life instead of merely surviving it. Buddhism teaches that every moment of awareness is valuable because life itself is fragile and temporary. The sound of rain will not last forever. People you love will not remain forever. Your youth will not remain forever. Even this current chapter of your life will eventually disappear. Understanding this deeply changes the heart. You stop taking ordinary life for granted. You stop wasting energy on meaningless worries constantly. You stop allowing fear to dominate your existence. Instead, you begin protecting your peace more carefully, because eventually, every person reaches the same realization. Life moved much faster than expected, and when that realization arrives, nobody wishes they spent more time worrying. They wish they had been more present, more peaceful, more grateful, more alive. Buddhism teaches that true wisdom is learning this before life passes you by completely, because the more you worry, the faster life slips away unnoticed. And one day, the moments anxiety stole from you become memories you can never get back again. 10. Peace begins the moment you stop feeding worry. One of the most powerful truths Buddhism teaches is that the human mind becomes stronger or weaker depending on what it continuously feeds itself every day. If the mind constantly feeds fear, anxiety grows stronger. If the mind constantly feeds anger, suffering grows stronger. And if the mind constantly feeds worry, peace slowly disappears from life completely. Many people unknowingly spend years feeding worry without realizing it. They replay negative thoughts repeatedly. They overanalyze every situation. They expect the worst constantly. They mentally prepare for pain every single day. They search for problems even during peaceful moments. Over time, this becomes a habit. The mind becomes trained to live in fear automatically. Buddhism teaches that suffering often continues, not because life itself is constantly painful, but because people repeatedly feed fearful thinking patterns inside their own mind. Every time fear appears, they immediately give it attention, emotion, and energy. Instead of observing the thought calmly and letting it pass, they hold on to it and mentally expand it. One fearful thought becomes 10 more fearful thoughts. One small worry becomes emotional panic. One uncertain situation becomes a mental disaster. This is how anxiety slowly takes control of a person's inner world. Many people believe they cannot control this process at all. They believe worrying is simply part of their personality forever. But Buddhism teaches something deeply important. Thoughts grow stronger when they are constantly fed. Whatever receives your attention repeatedly becomes more powerful inside the mind. If you constantly focus on fear, fear grows. If you constantly focus on problems, life feels heavier. If you constantly focus on worst-case scenarios, the nervous system begins living in permanent tension. Eventually, worry stops becoming an occasional emotion and becomes a way of living. This is why many people wake up already anxious before the day even begins. Their mind has become conditioned to immediately search for danger. Instead of waking up peacefully, the brain instantly begins replaying stress, responsibilities, fears, and future uncertainty. The body itself begins carrying this emotional weight too. Breathing becomes shallow, sleep becomes difficult. The nervous system remains tense. The mind struggles to relax. Even peaceful moments feel emotionally unsafe. Buddhism teaches that peace cannot grow inside a mind that is constantly feeding fear every day. A fearful mind creates fearful experiences. A restless mind creates restless living. This does not mean life itself is always terrible. It means the mind's relationship with life becomes distorted by anxiety. Many worried people are no longer seeing reality clearly. They are seeing life through the lens of fear. Because of this, they expect rejection quickly. They assume failure quickly. They distrust peace quickly. They emotionally prepare for disaster automatically. Even when good things happen, The mind struggles to enjoy them because fear immediately whispers, "This won't last. Something bad will happen soon. Do not relax too much." The constant fear slowly poisons happiness. Buddhism teaches that inner peace requires awareness of what you allow into your mind repeatedly. Many people are extremely careful about what they eat physically, but completely careless about what they feed themselves mentally. They feed the mind endless negativity, endless comparison, endless fear, endless overthinking, endless mental noise. Then they wonder why peace feels impossible. The human mind becomes shaped by repeated attention. If you spend every day mentally focused on fear, anxiety eventually becomes your emotional home. The nervous system begins treating ordinary life like a threat, even when no immediate danger exists. This is why some people cannot relax even during peaceful moments. Their mind has forgotten how to feel safe internally. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because mindfulness interrupts unconscious mental feeding. Instead of automatically believing every anxious thought, you begin observing thoughts more carefully. You begin asking, is this fear actually real? Am I creating unnecessary suffering? Is my mind exaggerating this situation? This awareness becomes powerful because it weakens the automatic control worry has over the mind. Many people suffer not because thoughts appear, but because they continuously feed those thoughts emotionally. A fearful thought appears, and they immediately follow it. Then another fearful thought appears, then another. Soon the mind becomes trapped in an endless cycle of anxiety. But Buddhism teaches that thoughts do not need to control you automatically. You can notice a fearful thought without emotionally feeding it. You can observe anxiety without becoming consumed by it. You can let thoughts pass without building your identity around them. This changes everything internally. The mind slowly becomes quieter. Fear loses some of its emotional power. The nervous system begins calming down. Most importantly, peace finally has space to grow. Many people are trying to find peace while continuing to feed anxiety every day. This is impossible. Peace requires different mental habits. A peaceful mind is not created overnight. It is built slowly through awareness, mindfulness, emotional discipline, and conscious attention. Every moment you stop feeding unnecessary fear, the mind becomes slightly lighter. Every moment you interrupt overthinking, inner peace grows stronger. Every moment you return attention to the present moment, anxiety weakens. This is why Buddhism places so much importance on conscious awareness. Without awareness, the mind becomes uncontrolled. It reacts automatically to every fear. It believes every thought. It creates suffering unconsciously. But awareness creates freedom. The moment you become aware of how much fear controls your thinking, you gain the ability to slowly change your relationship with those thoughts. You stop blindly following every anxious prediction. You stop treating every uncertainty like a catastrophe. You stop mentally torturing yourself over situations you cannot control. And little by little, emotional peace begins returning. Buddhism teaches that the mind becomes calmer when it learns how to stay in the present moment, instead of constantly feeding imaginary future pain. Most worry exists in the future. What if this happens? What if I fail? What if something goes wrong? But in the present moment itself, many of those fears do not actually exist yet. The mind creates suffering by continuously traveling into imaginary future disasters. Mindfulness brings the mind back to reality. Right now you are breathing. Right now this moment exists. Right now, life is happening. The more deeply you connect to the present moment, the less emotional energy worry receives. This does not mean problems disappear completely. Buddhism never teaches denial of reality. Difficult situations still happen sometimes. Pain still exists sometimes. But there is a huge difference between experiencing pain naturally and mentally multiplying suffering through endless fear. A mindful person experiences difficulty differently. Instead of instantly panicking, they become more aware. Instead of emotionally collapsing, they observe calmly. Instead of feeding fear endlessly, they return attention to the present moment. This creates emotional stability. Many people today are emotionally exhausted, not because life itself is impossible, but because the mind never stops feeding unnecessary fear. Their thoughts attack them constantly. Their inner dialogue becomes harsh and fearful. The nervous system remains overwhelmed all the time. Eventually, this mental exhaustion affects every area of life. Relationships suffer, sleep suffers, joy disappears, peace disappears, motivation weakens, the heart becomes tired. Buddhism teaches that peace begins the moment you stop making fear the center of your inner world. This requires practice. Because the mind has often spent years learning anxiety habits, it learned to overthink automatically. It learned to fear uncertainty automatically. It learned to expect danger constantly. These habits do not disappear instantly, but they can slowly weaken through awareness and mindfulness. Every time you interrupt overthinking, you weaken anxiety slightly. Every time you observe fear calmly instead of feeding it, inner freedom grows. Every time you return to the present moment, peace becomes stronger. This is why Buddhism teaches compassion toward yourself during healing. Many people become angry at themselves for feeling anxious. But fighting yourself aggressively only creates more suffering. Healing requires patience. The mind slowly learns calmness again. The nervous system slowly relearns safety. The heart slowly relearns peace. And as this happens, life itself begins feeling different emotionally. Small moments become enjoyable again. Silence feels comforting again. Rest no longer feels guilty. The future stops feeling terrifying all the time. Most importantly, you stop living entirely inside fear. Buddhism teaches that true freedom is not controlling every external situation perfectly. True freedom is no longer being controlled internally by fear all the time. This changes the entire experience of living. You begin trusting life more. You begin trusting yourself more. You stop needing constant certainty before allowing yourself to feel peace. Many people unknowingly waste years waiting for anxiety to disappear completely before allowing themselves to live fully. But Buddhism teaches something deeper. Peace does not come from eliminating every uncertainty in life. Peace comes from changing your relationship with uncertainty. The moment you stop feeding fear constantly, the mind finally begins calming down. And underneath all the anxiety, overthinking, and mental noise, you slowly rediscover something that was always there beneath the chaos. Inner peace. Not perfect peace, not a life without problems, but a quieter mind, a softer heart, a calmer relationship with life. This is why Buddhism teaches awareness so deeply, because awareness breaks unconscious suffering. Awareness interrupts mental chaos. Awareness helps people stop destroying their peace automatically every single day. The more conscious you become of your thoughts, the less power those thoughts have over your life. And eventually, you realize something life-changing. Worry was never protecting your peace. It was stealing it. 11. The life you are worrying about is happening right now. One of the saddest realities of human life is that many people spend so much time worrying about living that they forget to actually live. Their mind becomes so obsessed with the future, fear, uncertainty, and problems that they completely miss the life unfolding in front of them every single day. Buddhism teaches that the present moment is not just a small part of life. The present moment is life itself. Not tomorrow, not next year, not someday in the future. Right now. This exact moment is your life. But many people are mentally absent from it almost all the time. While eating, they are worrying. While resting, they are overthinking. While spending time with loved ones, they are mentally replaying problems. While experiencing peaceful moments, they are emotionally preparing for future pain. Because of this, life quietly slips away unnoticed. Many people believe they are simply being responsible by worrying constantly. But Buddhism teaches that excessive worry disconnects people from reality itself. It traps the mind inside fear and imagination until a person no longer experiences the present moment deeply anymore. The body may still be alive, but the mind is somewhere else constantly. This creates a painful kind of existence. People become emotionally disconnected from ordinary life. Simple moments stop feeling meaningful. Peace becomes rare. Joy becomes temporary. The mind never truly rests, and eventually, People begin feeling exhausted without fully understanding why. The reason is simple. They are trying to survive life psychologically instead of experiencing it consciously. Buddhism teaches that life is not meant to be lived in permanent fear. Human beings were not created to spend every day mentally preparing for disaster. Yet this is exactly how many people live. Their nervous system stays tense constantly. Their thoughts race constantly. Their mind searches for danger constantly. Even when life becomes peaceful for a moment, anxiety quickly interrupts it. This happens because the mind has become addicted to future thinking. What if something goes wrong? What if I fail? What if this happiness disappears? What if life becomes difficult again? The mind keeps running forward into uncertainty instead of staying connected to the present moment. But Buddhism teaches that the future is never fully controllable. No amount of overthinking can guarantee safety forever. No amount of fear can prevent all pain. No amount of anxiety can perfectly control life. The only thing worry truly accomplishes is stealing peace from the moments that already exist. This is why many people eventually look back on life with regret. Not because life contained difficulties, but because they spent so much time mentally absent from it. They realize they missed beautiful moments because they were distracted by fear. They missed opportunities because anxiety controlled them. They failed to enjoy simple experiences because their thoughts never slowed down, and suddenly, time is gone. Buddhism constantly reminds people that life is temporary because awareness of impermanence awakens gratitude. It helps people understand that ordinary moments are far more valuable than they realize. A conversation with someone you love, a quiet evening, a peaceful morning, a healthy body, a deep breath, a calm walk outside, laughter, stillness. These moments may appear small, but they are actually life itself. The problem is that worried minds often overlook them completely. An anxious person can sit in a beautiful place and still feel miserable because fear dominates their attention. Meanwhile, a peaceful person can sit somewhere ordinary and still feel grateful because their mind is present enough to experience the moment fully. This is why Buddhism teaches that peace does not come from controlling external life perfectly. Peace comes from changing the condition of the mind. A fearful mind turns even peaceful moments into suffering. A peaceful mind can find beauty even during imperfect situations. Many people spend years chasing happiness externally while ignoring the chaos inside their own mind. They believe peace will finally arrive after success, money, recognition, relationships, or certainty. But Buddhism teaches that inner peace cannot be postponed endlessly into the future, because the future eventually becomes old age. Then regret appears. Many elderly people reach the end of life realizing they were always waiting to finally live. Waiting for less stress, waiting for more money, waiting for the perfect time, waiting for certainty, waiting for problems to disappear. But while they waited, life quietly moved forward without stopping. This realization becomes heartbreaking, because once time passes, it never returns again. Buddhism teaches that awareness of death is not meant to create fear. It is meant to awaken people from unconscious living. It reminds people that life is fragile and temporary, which means every moment matters far more than the human mind usually realizes. Most people live as if they have endless time. Then one day, reality reminds them they do not. People age, loved ones disappear, health changes. Entire chapters of life end unexpectedly. And suddenly, the ordinary moments once ignored become priceless memories. This is why mindfulness becomes so important. Mindfulness brings people back into their actual life, instead of leaving them trapped inside endless mental noise. It teaches people how to breathe consciously, how to notice beauty again, how to slow down internally, how to stop rushing through existence unconsciously. Many people are physically alive but emotionally numb, because anxiety has disconnected them from the experience of living fully. They wake up already overwhelmed. They spend the day mentally exhausted. Then they go to sleep worrying about tomorrow, and the cycle repeats for years. This is not truly living. This is psychological survival. Buddhism teaches that true living begins when awareness returns. When you finally notice the present moment again, something changes emotionally. Food tastes better. Nature feels calming. Silence feels peaceful. Rest feels healing. Conversations feel meaningful. Why? Because your attention is no longer permanently trapped in fear. The more present you become, the more emotionally alive you feel. This is one of the deepest truths Buddhism teaches. Presence creates connection. Connection with life. Connection with peace. Connection with gratitude. Connection with yourself. But worry creates disconnection. Disconnection from the present. Disconnection from joy. Disconnection from inner peace. Disconnection from reality itself. Many people are constantly searching for happiness while mentally absent from their own life almost every day. They overlook simple blessings because anxiety keeps their attention focused on imagined future pain. This creates endless dissatisfaction. The mind becomes incapable of appreciating what already exists, because it is always chasing safety somewhere in the future. But Buddhism teaches that safety itself is temporary. Life itself is uncertain. Nothing stays permanent forever. The more you fight this truth, the more suffering grows. The more you accept this truth, the more peaceful the mind becomes. A peaceful person understands that life will always contain uncertainty sometimes. But instead of constantly fearing uncertainty, they focus on being fully alive in the present moment while life still exists. This changes priorities completely. Suddenly, peace becomes more important than constant achievement. Presence becomes more valuable than endless overthinking. Simple moments become enough. The mind stops demanding perfection before allowing happiness. This creates emotional freedom. Many people think happiness comes from controlling every outcome successfully. Buddhism teaches the opposite. Happiness grows when the mind stops constantly fighting life. This is why mindfulness practices are so powerful. They train the mind to return to reality instead of endlessly escaping into fear and mental noise. Breathing slowly, observing thoughts calmly, paying attention to ordinary moments, sitting in silence peacefully. These simple practices reconnect people back to life itself. At first, many anxious people struggle with this because the mind is addicted to distraction and overthinking. Silence feels uncomfortable because it exposes how restless the mind has become. But slowly, awareness begins calming the nervous system. The mind becomes quieter. Thoughts lose intensity. Fear weakens, grows stronger, and eventually, something beautiful happens. Life stops feeling like something you are constantly trying to survive. It starts feeling like something you are actually experiencing again. You stop rushing through every moment. You stop mentally escaping your own existence. You stop sacrificing peace for imaginary future disasters constantly. Instead, you begin appreciating life while it is still here. This understanding becomes deeply emotional because eventually every person realizes how temporary everything truly is. The people you love will not remain forever. Your current chapter of life will not remain forever. Even your own life will eventually end someday. Buddhism teaches that remembering this truth creates wisdom, not depression. Because once you understand how fragile life really is, you stop wanting to waste it trapped inside unnecessary mental suffering all the time. You stop allowing fear to steal every beautiful moment. You stop postponing happiness endlessly. You stop waiting for perfection before allowing yourself to feel. You begin living now, not someday, not after everything becomes certain. Now, this exact moment becomes important because you finally understand something most people realize too late. The life you keep worrying about is already happening while you worry. Every day anxiety steals from you is a day you never get back. Every peaceful moment missed because of overthinking disappears forever once it passes. This is why Buddhism teaches presence so deeply, because presence protects life from being completely consumed by fear. The more present you become, the slower life feels emotionally. The more mindful you become, the more meaningful ordinary moments become. The more peaceful the mind becomes, the more beautiful life begins to feel again. And eventually, you realize something life-changing. You were never meant to spend your entire existence mentally preparing for life. You were meant to actually live it. 12. One day you will realize peace was more important than worry. One day, every human being reaches a moment of deep realization. A moment where they suddenly understand how much time, energy, and emotional peace was wasted on unnecessary worry. They look back on life and see how often fear controlled their thoughts, their decisions, their happiness, and their ability to fully experience the present moment. Buddhism teaches that much of human suffering is self-created through attachment, fear, and endless mental resistance. The mind constantly searches for certainty in a world that has never been fully certain. Because of this, people spend years trapped inside anxiety, trying to control life in ways that were never truly possible. But eventually, wisdom begins teaching a painful truth. Peace was always more valuable than worry. Most people do not realize this early enough. They believe worrying constantly means they are being responsible. They think overthinking every possibility will somehow protect them from pain. They mentally prepare for disasters every single day, hoping fear will keep them safe emotionally. But fear rarely creates peace. It only creates exhaustion. Many people wake up every morning already mentally tired, because the mind never truly rests. Their thoughts immediately begin racing. What if something goes wrong? What if I fail? What if life becomes difficult again? What if people disappoint me? The mind keeps creating fear even during moments when nothing terrible is actually happening. This becomes extremely dangerous because anxiety slowly steals the ability to enjoy life naturally. People stop feeling emotionally connected to ordinary moments. Their nervous system stays trapped in survival mode so constantly that peace begins feeling unfamiliar. Even during beautiful experiences, the mind remains distracted. A peaceful evening becomes interrupted by stress. Time with loved ones becomes emotionally distant. Success feels temporary because fear immediately searches for the next possible problem. Buddhism teaches that this is not true living. True living requires presence, awareness, inner stillness, connection with the present moment. But worried minds struggle to experience these things because anxiety constantly drags attention into imaginary future pain. This is why many people reach the later stages of life filled with regret, not because life was always terrible, but because fear prevented them from fully experiencing the life they already had. They realize they spent years emotionally unavailable to their own existence. They worried while their children grew up. They worried while life quietly passed by. They worried while beautiful moments disappeared forever. They worried during opportunities they should have appreciated more deeply. And eventually, time ran out. Buddhism teaches impermanence because awareness of impermanence awakens wisdom. It reminds people that everything changes, everything passes, and every human life eventually ends. This understanding changes priorities completely. Suddenly, endless overthinking stops feeling intelligent. Constant fear stops feeling necessary. Mental chaos stops feeling valuable. Instead, peace becomes precious. A calm morning becomes precious. A quiet conversation becomes precious. Rest becomes precious. Breathing peacefully becomes precious. Simple moments become deeply meaningful. Most people spend too much of life chasing things, while ignoring the emotional quality of their own mind. But Buddhism teaches that inner peace shapes the entire human experience. A fearful mind turns life into suffering. A peaceful mind turns ordinary life into something beautiful. This is why two people can experience the exact same situation completely differently internally. One person lives in constant tension. The other remains calm and present. One person fears uncertainty constantly. The other accepts uncertainty naturally. One person keeps postponing happiness into the future. The other experiences gratitude in the present moment. The external world may look similar, but their inner world is completely different. Buddhism teaches that true peace does not come from controlling every external condition perfectly. It comes from transforming your relationship with your own mind. Many people are searching for peace in achievements, money, validation, relationships, or future success. But no external thing can permanently calm a mind addicted to fear. Even after success, anxiety finds new worries. Even after safety, the mind searches for new danger. Even after problems disappear, fear creates new possibilities to overthink. This is why peace cannot depend entirely on external circumstances. It must grow internally. A peaceful person understands something deeply important. Life will always contain uncertainty sometimes. People may disappoint you, plans may fail, pain may appear unexpectedly, loss may happen eventually. But constantly worrying about these possibilities does not protect life from suffering. It only steals peace before suffering even arrives. This realization changes the way a person lives emotionally. They stop trying to mentally control every future outcome. They stop treating every uncertainty like a disaster. They stop wasting so much energy on things they cannot fully control. Instead, they begin protecting their peace more carefully, because eventually, every person understands something painful. The mind can destroy life even when life itself still contains beauty. There are people surrounded by blessings who still feel miserable because anxiety controls their inner world completely. They cannot appreciate what they already have because fear constantly tells them something terrible is coming next. Buddhism teaches mindfulness. Mindfulness interrupts this cycle. Mindfulness brings awareness back to reality instead of imagination, back to the breath, back to the present moment, back to ordinary life. Most fear exists in the future. Most regret exists in the past. But peace exists in the present moment. This is why presence becomes so powerful spiritually. When the mind becomes fully present, something changes internally. Breathing slows down, thoughts become quieter, the nervous system relaxes. Life feels less rushed. Simple moments begin feeling enough again. But anxious people often struggle with this because the mind has become addicted to overthinking. Many people no longer know how to simply sit peacefully without mental noise controlling them. Silence feels uncomfortable because it exposes how restless the mind has become, so they constantly distract themselves. Phones, social media, entertainment, endless stimulation, constant busyness, not because they are truly fulfilled by these things, but because distraction temporarily hides inner anxiety. But Buddhism teaches that distraction is not peace. Real peace requires awareness. Awareness of thoughts, awareness of emotions, awareness of fear, awareness of how much suffering the mind creates unnecessarily. The more aware a person becomes, the more they begin noticing how often anxiety steals life from them. They notice how many beautiful moments were missed because of overthinking. How much emotional energy was wasted on imaginary scenarios. How many years disappeared while the mind remained trapped in fear. This realization can feel painful, but it also becomes awakening. Because once a person truly sees how much suffering worry creates, they no longer want to continue living unconsciously. They begin choosing peace more intentionally. They stop feeding every fearful thought automatically. They stop turning every problem into emotional catastrophe. They stop mentally preparing for disaster all day long. And slowly, inner stillness begins returning. Buddhism teaches that peace is not weakness. Peace is wisdom. A peaceful person is not someone avoiding reality. A peaceful person is someone who no longer allows fear to dominate their entire inner world constantly. This creates tremendous emotional freedom. The heart becomes lighter. The mind becomes clearer. Life becomes more meaningful. Many people think happiness comes from excitement, achievement, or constant stimulation. But Buddhism teaches that some of the deepest forms of happiness come from inner calmness, a quiet mind, a relaxed nervous system, freedom from constant overthinking, the ability to enjoy ordinary moments peacefully. These things become priceless once a person truly understands how exhausting anxiety actually is. Eventually, every human being reaches a moment where they realize that endless worry never gave them the life they wanted. It only stole the peace they already could have experienced. This is why Buddhism teaches letting go of attachment to control, letting go of obsessive fear, letting go of mental resistance, letting go of endless future anxiety. Not because life becomes perfect afterward, but because the mind finally stops fighting itself constantly. And when the mind stops fighting itself, something beautiful happens. Life becomes lighter. You stop rushing through every moment unconsciously. You stop treating every uncertainty like an emergency. You stop postponing happiness endlessly. Instead, you begin appreciating life while it still exists. The sound of rain feels calming again. A quiet evening feels meaningful again. A conversation feels valuable again. Breathing peacefully feels enough again. These ordinary moments stop feeling small because you finally understand how temporary life truly is. Buddhism teaches that wisdom is not found in constant mental struggle. Wisdom is found in awareness, presence, acceptance, inner peace. Because eventually, every person reaches the same truth. No amount of worry can stop life from changing. No amount of fear can make life permanent. No amount of overthinking can guarantee perfect safety forever. But peace can completely transform the way life is experienced while it lasts. And one day, when life becomes quieter and time feels shorter, you will not wish you spent more time worrying. You will wish you protected your peace more carefully. You will wish you appreciated ordinary moments more deeply. You will wish you allowed yourself to truly live instead of constantly fearing life. Because in the end, peace was always more important than worry. 13. The mind creates chains long before reality does. One of the deepest truths Buddhism teaches is that most people become prisoners inside their own mind long before life itself actually traps them. The human mind has the ability to create fear, suffering, limitation, and emotional pain even when no immediate danger exists. This is why many people appear free externally while internally feeling trapped every single day. Their thoughts control them. Their fears control them. Their worries control them. Their overthinking controls them. And slowly, the mind builds invisible chains around their life. Many people cannot enjoy peace because anxiety constantly whispers worst-case scenarios into their mind. Even during calm moments, they expect something bad to happen. Even during success, they fear losing everything. Even during happiness, they prepare emotionally for pain. Buddhism teaches that suffering often begins internally long before reality itself creates suffering externally. This is why two people can experience the same situation very differently. One person faces uncertainty calmly. Another person collapses emotionally before anything has even happened. One person experiences temporary pain and moves forward wisely. Another person creates years of mental suffering from the same experience. The difference is not always life itself. The difference is often the condition of the mind. Many people unknowingly spend years trapped inside imaginary prisons created by fear. They fear rejection before speaking honestly. They fear failure before even trying. They fear judgment before expressing themselves. They fear loss before life has taken anything away yet. Because of this, their entire existence becomes emotionally restricted. They stop taking healthy risks. They stop trusting life. They stop trusting themselves. They stop living naturally. This is one of the most painful effects of chronic worry. It shrinks life emotionally. Buddhism teaches that attachment to fear creates suffering because the mind begins seeing danger everywhere. Even ordinary situations start feeling emotionally threatening. A delayed message becomes anxiety. A small mistake becomes panic. A difficult conversation becomes emotional catastrophe. The mind continuously exaggerates uncertainty until life itself starts feeling overwhelming. Many people believe the external world is the main source of their suffering. But Buddhism teaches that the mind's interpretation of reality often creates even more suffering than reality itself. A fearful mind can turn small problems into major emotional pain. A peaceful mind can face difficult situations with stability and awareness. This understanding changes everything spiritually. Because once you realize how much suffering the mind creates automatically, you stop blindly believing every thought that appears. You begin questioning fear instead of obeying it immediately. This becomes extremely important because the mind is not always truthful. Sometimes anxiety lies. Sometimes fear exaggerates. Sometimes overthinking creates emotional suffering that does not match reality at all. But most people never stop to observe this process consciously. They automatically believe every fearful thought. They emotionally react to every anxious prediction. They allow the mind to control their emotional state completely. Eventually, the mind becomes their prison. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because mindfulness creates awareness between you and your thoughts. Instead of becoming consumed by fear automatically, you begin observing fear more calmly. You notice how quickly the mind jumps toward negativity. You notice how often overthinking creates unnecessary suffering. You notice how fear drains emotional energy from ordinary life. This awareness is powerful because awareness weakens unconscious mental patterns. The moment you become aware of how fear operates inside your mind, you stop becoming completely controlled by it. Many people live their entire life unconsciously reacting to thoughts. Fear appears, then emotional panic begins, then overthinking begins, then suffering grows. The process happens automatically. But Buddhism teaches that awareness interrupts this cycle. A mindful person notices fear without instantly feeding it. They notice anxiety without turning it into identity. They observe thoughts without treating every thought as reality. This creates emotional freedom. Most people do not realize how deeply worry affects the nervous system too. The body remembers fear. When the mind constantly lives in anxiety, the nervous system begins expecting danger all the time. The body remains tense. Breathing becomes shallow. Rest becomes difficult. Even peaceful situations feel emotionally unsafe. This is why many anxious people feel exhausted constantly, even when they are not physically working hard. Their body never fully relaxes because the mind never stops preparing for danger. Buddhism teaches that inner peace heals not only the mind, but the entire emotional system of the body too. A peaceful mind creates slower breathing, calmer emotions, more emotional clarity, less internal tension, but a fearful mind creates the opposite: restlessness, exhaustion, emotional instability, mental chaos. Many people today are carrying invisible emotional weight everywhere they go. They smile externally while internally fighting anxiety every day. They appear functional while emotionally overwhelmed inside. They continue surviving while slowly losing connection with peace. This is why Buddhism teaches that awareness is essential for freedom. Without awareness, the mind controls life unconsciously. People become trapped inside habits of fear without even realizing it. They replay painful memories daily. They imagine worst-case scenarios automatically. They emotionally prepare for rejection constantly. They overthink small situations endlessly. Eventually, this becomes their normal emotional state. But Buddhism teaches that suffering becomes lighter when awareness enters the mind. Awareness allows you to step back internally and observe what the mind is doing. You begin realizing, my thoughts are creating much of this suffering. My fear is exaggerating reality. I am mentally carrying pain that does not even exist yet. This realization becomes deeply freeing, because once you truly see how much unnecessary suffering worry creates, you stop wanting to feed fear constantly. You begin protecting your inner peace more intentionally. This changes your relationship with life completely. Instead of reacting impulsively to every fear, you become calmer. Instead of assuming disaster immediately, you become more balanced emotionally. Instead of living inside endless mental tension, you begin relaxing into the present moment more deeply. Many people are waiting for life to become perfectly safe before allowing themselves to feel peace. But Buddhism teaches that perfect certainty does not exist permanently. Life changes constantly. Situations change constantly. People change constantly. The more attached you become to controlling every outcome, the more fragile your emotional state becomes. But a peaceful person understands something deeply important. Inner stability matters more than external certainty. A person with inner peace can face uncertainty with far greater emotional strength than someone whose peace depends entirely on external control. This is why Buddhism focuses so deeply on the condition of the mind itself. Because the mind shapes human experience. If the mind becomes trapped in fear, life feels frightening. If the mind becomes trapped in anger, life feels hostile. If the mind becomes peaceful, life begins feeling lighter. Many people search for freedom externally while remaining imprisoned internally. They believe more success will finally calm their anxiety. More money, more approval, more certainty. But external achievements cannot permanently free a fearful mind. The mind simply creates new worries afterward. This is why Buddhism teaches liberation through awareness instead of external perfection. True freedom begins when the mind stops creating unnecessary suffering constantly. This does not mean life suddenly becomes painless. Pain still exists sometimes. Loss still happens. Difficult situations still appear. But the mind no longer multiplies suffering endlessly through fear and overthinking. This changes the entire emotional experience of life. A peaceful person still experiences challenges, but they are no longer emotionally destroyed by every uncertainty. They trust themselves more deeply. They trust life more naturally. They stop expecting complete control before allowing themselves to feel calm. And because of this, life begins opening emotionally again. They become more present, more grateful, more connected to ordinary moments, more emotionally alive. This is what Buddhism means by inner freedom, not escaping life, not avoiding responsibility, not becoming emotionless, but no longer being psychologically imprisoned by fear all the time. Most people do not realize how much anxiety limits their existence until they finally experience moments of genuine inner peace. Only then do they understand how heavy the mind had become, how much energy was wasted on unnecessary fear, how much life was missed because of overthinking, how disconnected they had become from the present moment. This realization becomes transformative, because once a person experiences inner stillness deeply, they no longer want to return to endless mental suffering. They begin valuing peace differently, protecting their energy differently, living more consciously. They stop feeding every fearful thought automatically. They stop creating emotional catastrophes from uncertainty. They stop allowing anxiety to control every decision. And slowly, the invisible chains inside the mind begin breaking. This is why Buddhism teaches that awakening begins internally first, because the greatest prison was never the external world. It was the fearful mind constantly creating suffering inside itself. And the moment awareness enters that suffering, freedom quietly begins. 14. Stop sacrificing your entire life to fear. One of the saddest things Buddhism teaches about human suffering is that many people unknowingly sacrifice their entire life to fear. Not physical fear alone, but psychological fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of uncertainty, fear of losing people, fear of making mistakes, fear of the future, fear of pain. Because of these fears, millions of people spend most of their life emotionally trapped. They hesitate constantly. They overthink constantly. They worry constantly. They doubt themselves constantly. And while all this mental suffering continues inside the mind, life itself quietly keeps moving forward without stopping. This is why Buddhism teaches that fear is one of the greatest thieves of peace. Fear steals joy from ordinary moments. Fear steals confidence from the heart. Fear steals presence from the mind. Fear steals freedom from life itself. Many people believe fear protects them. They think worrying constantly will somehow prevent suffering. So they mentally prepare for disaster every single day, hoping anxiety will keep them emotionally safe. But Buddhism teaches that fear rarely protects peace. It usually destroys it. A worried person suffers before pain even arrives. They emotionally experience disasters that only exist inside imagination. They replay negative possibilities repeatedly until the nervous system becomes exhausted. Over time, the mind becomes addicted to fear. Even when life becomes peaceful, the mind continues searching for danger automatically. Anxiety becomes so familiar that calmness starts feeling unfamiliar. This is why many people cannot fully relax anymore. They sit peacefully, but the mind races. They rest physically, but the nervous system remains tense. They experience good moments, but fear interrupts them immediately. The mind whispers, "What if this peace disappears? What if something bad happens next? What if life becomes difficult again?" Because of this, People rarely feel emotionally safe enough to fully experience the present moment. Buddhism teaches that this constant psychological fear disconnects people from life itself. Instead of living openly, they begin living defensively. They avoid risks, avoid vulnerability, avoid uncertainty, avoid emotional openness. Little by little, fear starts shrinking their world. Many people do not realize this is happening because anxiety becomes normal over time. They become so used to overthinking that they forget what inner calmness even feels like anymore. But Buddhism teaches that a mind trapped in constant fear cannot experience true freedom. Freedom is not only external, freedom is internal too. A person can have money, opportunities, success, and still feel emotionally imprisoned by fear every day. This is why Buddhism focuses so deeply on the condition of the mind itself, because the mind shapes human experience more than most people realize. A fearful mind turns life into constant emotional survival. A peaceful mind turns ordinary life into something meaningful and beautiful. Many people spend years sacrificing peace, trying to avoid future pain. But eventually, they realize something heartbreaking. Most of the things they worried about never even happened. Yet the emotional suffering created by anxiety was still real. They lost sleep, lost peace, lost energy, lost presence, lost joy. All because the mind kept creating imaginary danger repeatedly. Buddhism teaches that human beings create enormous suffering through attachment to control. People desperately want guarantees from life. They want certainty that nothing painful will happen. But life has never worked that way. Everything changes constantly. People change, situations change, health changes, relationships change. Life itself remains uncertain. The more a person fights this truth, the more suffering grows internally. But a peaceful person learns to stop demanding perfect certainty from life before allowing themselves to feel calm. This changes everything emotionally. Instead of constantly fearing uncertainty, they begin accepting uncertainty naturally. Instead of mentally preparing for disaster every day, they begin trusting themselves more deeply. Instead of sacrificing life to fear, they begin experiencing life more fully. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because mindfulness interrupts unconscious fear. Most anxious people live almost entirely inside their thoughts. The mind constantly predicts problems, imagines rejection, replays painful memories, creates future disasters. And because attention stays trapped inside fear, the person loses connection with reality itself. But mindfulness brings awareness back to the present moment, back to breathing, back to the body, back to ordinary life, back to what is actually happening right now, instead of what the mind imagines could happen later. This is powerful because most fear exists in the future. Anxiety survives through imagination. What if this happens? What if I fail? What if everything goes wrong? The mind keeps mentally traveling into future pain that does not even exist yet. Meanwhile, life itself is happening now. This exact moment is life. This breath is life. This conversation is life. This peaceful evening is life. But anxious minds miss these moments because fear steals attention constantly. Many people are physically alive, but emotionally absent from their own existence. Buddhism teaches that awareness brings people back to life again. When the mind becomes calmer, something beautiful begins returning. Presence. You begin noticing ordinary moments more deeply. You begin appreciating peace more sincerely. You stop rushing through life unconsciously. You stop treating every uncertainty like an emergency. The heart becomes softer. The nervous system becomes calmer. The mind becomes quieter. This creates emotional freedom. Most people think freedom means external success or unlimited choices. But Buddhism teaches that true freedom begins when fear no longer controls your inner world constantly. A fearful person cannot fully enjoy life because anxiety always interrupts peace. But a peaceful person can experience joy even during imperfect situations because their mind is no longer trapped in constant psychological survival. This does not mean they never experience pain. Pain still exists. Difficulty still exists. Loss still happens. But they stop multiplying suffering through endless mental resistance and overthinking. This is one of the greatest spiritual transformations Buddhism teaches. The mind stops fighting life constantly. Instead of asking, "How do I avoid all pain forever?" the person begins asking, "How do I remain peaceful and aware while living through uncertainty?" This creates inner strength, because true emotional strength is not controlling life perfectly. It is remaining calm even when life cannot be controlled completely. Many people spend their entire life trying to emotionally protect themselves from pain, but in the process, they stop truly living. They become emotionally guarded, emotionally tense, emotionally unavailable. Fear becomes their constant companion. But Buddhism teaches that life was never meant to be lived this way. Human beings were meant to experience life consciously, not constantly survive it psychologically. A peaceful person understands that life is temporary. Moments disappear quickly. People disappear eventually. Even pain itself eventually changes. This awareness creates gratitude instead of fear. Gratitude for simple moments. Gratitude for being alive today. Gratitude for peace while it exists. An anxious mind struggles to feel this gratitude because fear constantly focuses attention on what could go wrong next. This is why Buddhism teaches returning to the present moment repeatedly. The present moment weakens fear. Right now, many imagined disasters do not actually exist. Right now, life is simply unfolding. Right now, breathing is happening. Right now, this moment exists fully. The more deeply you connect with the present moment, the less emotional power fear has over you. This changes your relationship with life completely. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop expecting perfect certainty. You stop sacrificing peace for imaginary future disasters. Instead, you begin trusting yourself more deeply. You realize, "I can handle uncertainty. I do not need to mentally torture myself every day. I do not need fear controlling my entire existence." This understanding becomes emotionally liberating. Many people believe they will finally feel peaceful after life becomes safe enough. But Buddhism teaches something deeper. Peace is not created by eliminating all uncertainty. Peace is created by transforming your relationship with uncertainty itself. The moment you stop feeding fear constantly, life becomes lighter internally. You stop carrying so much invisible emotional weight. You stop creating unnecessary suffering every day. You stop sacrificing the present moment to future anxiety. And slowly, you begin experiencing something many people spend their whole life searching for: inner calmness. Not because life became perfect, not because all problems disappeared, but because the mind finally stopped attacking itself constantly. This is why Buddhism teaches letting go so deeply. Letting go of obsessive fear, letting go of endless overthinking, letting go of the need to control everything, letting go of mental resistance. Not because you stop caring about life, but because you finally stop destroying your peace unnecessarily. Eventually, every person realizes something painful. Fear cannot stop life from changing. Fear cannot stop pain from existing sometimes. Fear cannot stop time from moving forward. But fear can absolutely steal the peace of the life you are living right now. And once you truly understand this, you stop wanting to waste your existence trapped inside constant anxiety anymore. You begin protecting your peace more carefully, living more consciously, breathing more slowly, experiencing life more deeply. Because one day, life will end for every human being. And when that moment comes, nobody wishes they spent more time worrying. They wish they had lived more freely, loved more deeply, felt more present, protected their peace, and stopped sacrificing their entire life to fear. 15. One day your mind will either become your prison or your peace. One of the deepest truths Buddhism teaches is that the human mind has incredible power. The same mind that can create peace can also create suffering. The same mind that can experience gratitude can also become trapped in fear. Over time, every person slowly builds an inner world through their thoughts, habits, emotional patterns, and relationship with life. And eventually, the mind becomes one of two things: a prison or a place of peace. Many people do not realize they are building their prison every single day through constant worry, overthinking, fear, and emotional chaos. Every fearful thought they continuously feed becomes another invisible chain around the mind. Every moment spent trapped in anxiety slowly conditions the nervous system to live in survival mode permanently. Buddhism teaches that suffering grows when the mind becomes unconscious and uncontrolled. An unconscious mind reacts automatically to everything. Every problem becomes overwhelming. Every uncertainty creates panic. Every difficulty becomes emotional suffering. The mind loses balance because fear controls perception completely. This is why many people feel emotionally trapped even when their external life appears normal. They may have opportunities, relationships, money, or stability, but internally the mind never rests. Fear follows them everywhere. They wake up anxious, sleep anxious, think anxiously, live anxiously. And because this emotional state continues for years, they slowly start believing this is simply normal life. But Buddhism teaches that this is not peace. This is mental imprisonment. The prison is not always external circumstances. Often, the prison is the fearful relationship a person has with their own mind. Many people spend their entire life running from fear without realizing that fear keeps growing because they continuously feed it attention. The mind constantly says, "What if something bad happens? What if I fail? What if I lose everything? What if people reject me?" Instead of observing these thoughts calmly, people emotionally believe them immediately. Then the mind creates more fear, then more overthinking, then more suffering. Eventually, anxiety becomes the center of life itself. This is why Buddhism teaches mindfulness so deeply. Mindfulness creates awareness between you and your thoughts. Without awareness, the mind controls life automatically. With awareness, you begin seeing how thoughts influence suffering. This changes everything internally. You begin noticing how often fear exaggerates situations. You begin noticing how overthinking drains emotional energy. You begin noticing how much anxiety steals from ordinary moments. And slowly, the mind begins changing. Because awareness weakens unconscious mental suffering. Most people are not destroyed by reality itself. They are destroyed by the endless war happening inside their own mind every single day. The mind replays pain repeatedly, replays embarrassment repeatedly, replays future fears repeatedly. Even when no real danger exists, the mind continues creating emotional suffering. This is why Buddhism teaches that peace is not found by controlling life perfectly. Peace is created by transforming the condition of the mind itself. A peaceful mind experiences life differently. Difficult situations still happen sometimes, but the person no longer collapses emotionally every time uncertainty appears. Pain still exists, but the mind no longer multiplies suffering endlessly through resistance and fear. Problems still arise, but the nervous system no longer reacts as if every challenge is a catastrophe. This inner transformation becomes one of the greatest forms of freedom. Many people spend years searching for peace externally while ignoring the chaos inside themselves. They believe, "Once I achieve enough success, I will finally relax. Once life becomes stable, I will finally feel peaceful. Once I eliminate all problems, happiness will finally arrive." But Buddhism teaches something deeper. The external world can never permanently calm a fearful mind. Even after success, the anxious mind finds new fears. Even after safety, the mind searches for new uncertainty. Even after happiness, the mind fears losing it. This is why peace cannot depend entirely on external conditions. The mind itself must learn calmness. This is where true spiritual growth begins, not in controlling the world, but in learning how to stop the mind from creating unnecessary suffering constantly. Many people are exhausted not because life itself is impossible, but because the mind never stops fighting the future, fighting uncertainty, fighting painful memories, fighting reality, fighting itself. This constant mental conflict slowly drains the soul. Buddhism teaches acceptance because acceptance ends much of this unnecessary inner war. Acceptance does not mean weakness. It means the mind stops resisting reality every second. A peaceful person understands. Life will always contain uncertainty. Pain is part of being human. Nothing remains permanent forever, and because they accept this truth, fear loses some of its control over them. Meanwhile, a fearful person keeps demanding impossible guarantees from life. They want certainty about tomorrow, certainty about relationships, certainty about the future, certainty about outcomes. But life has never promised permanent certainty. The more attached a person becomes to controlling everything, the more fragile the mind becomes emotionally. This is why Buddhism teaches letting go. Not because you stop caring about life, but because you stop allowing fear to dominate your existence constantly. Many people confuse peace with laziness or emotional weakness. But true peace requires enormous inner awareness. A peaceful mind is not unconscious, it is deeply aware, aware of thoughts, aware of emotions, aware of suffering, aware of how fear operates internally. This awareness creates wisdom. Instead of reacting impulsively to every emotion, the person becomes calmer and more intentional. They stop believing every thought automatically. They stop turning every uncertainty into emotional disaster. They stop creating endless suffering from imagined future pain. Little by little, the mind becomes quieter. And as the mind becomes quieter, life begins feeling different emotionally. Ordinary moments feel meaningful again. Simple experiences feel beautiful again. Rest no longer feels uncomfortable. Silence becomes peaceful instead of frightening. This is because the mind is no longer trapped in permanent survival mode. Many anxious people fear silence because silence exposes the chaos inside the mind. This is why modern life has become filled with endless distraction. Phones, noise, entertainment, constant stimulation. People keep distracting themselves because sitting quietly with their own thoughts feels emotionally uncomfortable. But Buddhism teaches that true healing begins when a person becomes willing to observe their mind honestly. At first, this can feel difficult. You notice the fear, the overthinking, the emotional exhaustion, the constant tension. But awareness itself becomes healing because you finally stop unconsciously feeding these patterns automatically. This is where the prison slowly begins opening. The more conscious you become, the less power unconscious fear has over your life. You begin realizing, I do not need to follow every anxious thought. I do not need to mentally torture myself constantly. I do not need fear controlling my existence. This understanding creates inner freedom. Many people wait their entire life for external freedom while remaining imprisoned internally by fear every single day. But Buddhism teaches that true liberation begins inside the mind first. Because if the mind remains trapped in anxiety, even success feels stressful, even peace feels temporary. Even beautiful moments become interrupted by fear. But if the mind becomes peaceful, ordinary life itself begins feeling rich and meaningful again. A calm morning becomes enough. A deep breath becomes enough. A quiet walk becomes enough. Being alive becomes enough. This is one of the deepest transformations Buddhism offers. The mind stops searching desperately for peace externally because peace slowly begins growing internally. This does not mean life becomes perfect afterward. Pain still exists, challenges still exist, loss still happens. But the mind no longer turns every painful experience into endless emotional suffering. Instead of drowning in fear constantly, the person develops inner steadiness. This steadiness becomes incredibly powerful. Because life will always change, people will come and go, situations will rise and fall, nothing stays permanent forever. But a peaceful mind can move through these changes without becoming completely destroyed internally every time. This is true emotional strength. Not pretending pain does not exist, but no longer allowing fear to consume the entire mind constantly. Many people unknowingly waste decades trapped inside mental prisons they helped build through unconscious fear and endless overthinking. Then one day, they look back and realize how much life anxiety stole from them. The opportunities missed, the peaceful moments ignored, the joy interrupted, the emotional exhaustion carried for years. This realization becomes painful because time never returns. Buddhism teaches awareness now because awakening later often arrives together with regret. A wise person learns to protect their peace before life passes by completely. They stop feeding unnecessary fear. They stop living entirely inside future anxiety. They stop making worry the center of existence. And slowly the mind becomes lighter. The prison weakens. The heart softens. The nervous system calms. The present moment becomes visible again. Eventually, something beautiful happens. The mind that once created suffering begins creating peace instead. This is why Buddhism teaches that the mind is incredibly powerful. Because one day, your mind will become the place where you suffer the most, or the place where you finally discover peace. And the direction it moves depends on what you continuously feed it every single day. 16. The more you fear losing life, the less you actually live. One of the deepest ironies Buddhism teaches is that many people become so afraid of pain, failure, uncertainty, and loss that they stop fully living long before life itself ends. Their fear becomes so strong that it slowly controls every part of their existence. Instead of experiencing life openly, they begin emotionally hiding from it. They fear rejection, so they stop expressing themselves honestly. They fear failure, so they stop taking meaningful risks. They fear getting hurt, so they stop opening their heart completely. They fear uncertainty, so they spend every day trapped in overthinking. Little by little, fear starts shrinking their life. Buddhism teaches that attachment to safety can become a prison when the mind constantly demands certainty before allowing itself to feel peace. But life has never promised perfect certainty. Everything changes constantly. Every human being eventually experiences loss, disappointment, endings, and uncertainty. The more a person fights this truth, the more suffering grows internally. Many people believe worrying constantly protects them emotionally. They think if they mentally prepare for every possible disaster, they will somehow suffer less when life becomes difficult. But Buddhism teaches that this way of living actually creates continuous suffering. A worried person experiences pain many times before pain even arrives. They fear conversations before they happen, fear rejection before it exists, fear failure before trying, fear loss while life is still present. This constant emotional tension slowly exhausts the mind and nervous system. Over time, anxiety stops being temporary and becomes a permanent emotional atmosphere inside the person. Even during peaceful moments, fear continues whispering, "What if this disappears? What if everything goes wrong? What if I lose this happiness? What if life hurts me again?" Because of this, many people never fully relax into the present moment. Their body may be alive, but emotionally they remain guarded all the time. Buddhism teaches that this constant fear disconnects people from the direct experience of living. A fearful mind cannot fully appreciate ordinary moments because it is always mentally escaping into future uncertainty. This is why anxious people often struggle to enjoy life, even when life still contains beauty. They cannot fully enjoy success because they fear failure, cannot fully enjoy love because they fear abandonment, cannot fully enjoy peace because they fear future pain. Fear interrupts everything. Many people spend their whole life trying to avoid suffering so intensely that they accidentally avoid life itself. This is one of the saddest forms of unconscious living. The person becomes emotionally trapped inside protection mode permanently. Instead of experiencing life deeply, they emotionally monitor life, constantly looking for danger. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because mindfulness interrupts this fear-based existence. Mindfulness reconnects attention back to reality instead of imagination, back to breathing, back to awareness, back to this exact moment. Most fear exists inside thoughts about the future. What if? What if? What if? The mind becomes addicted to predicting disaster. But Buddhism teaches that no amount of overthinking can fully control life. Uncertainty is part of being human. The more a person demands total certainty before allowing themselves to feel peace, the more fragile their emotional state becomes. A peaceful person understands something deeply important. Life is temporary. Nothing stays forever. And because of this, every moment becomes precious. This understanding does not create depression. It creates awakening, because once you realize how fragile life truly is, you stop wanting to waste your existence trapped inside constant fear. You begin valuing presence more deeply. You begin appreciating ordinary moments more sincerely. You stop postponing happiness endlessly. Many people live as if real life will begin later. Later after stress disappears. later, after problems end, later, after life feels safer. But Buddhism teaches that later is never guaranteed. The future people keep waiting for eventually becomes old age. Then regret appears. People look back and realize they spent years mentally surviving instead of truly living. They realize how many moments anxiety stole from them, how many opportunities fear prevented, how much beauty they overlooked because the mind stayed trapped inside worry constantly. This realization becomes painful because time never returns. Buddhism teaches impermanence not to scare people, but to help them wake up before life disappears completely. Everything changes. Every moment passes. Every chapter eventually ends. This truth makes ordinary life sacred. A conversation becomes sacred. A peaceful evening becomes sacred. A walk outside becomes sacred. A simple breath becomes sacred. But anxious minds often overlook these things because fear constantly pulls attention away from the present moment. This creates emotional blindness. People stop seeing life clearly because the mind becomes obsessed with protecting itself from possible future pain. But Buddhism teaches that trying to protect yourself from all suffering often creates even greater suffering. Why? Because fear itself becomes the prison. Many people are not trapped by reality itself. They are trapped by their fearful relationship with reality. The mind constantly says, "Do not relax too much. Do not trust life. Do not feel too happy. Something bad is coming." Over time, the nervous system becomes conditioned to live in permanent emotional tension. This is exhausting. Many people feel tired every day not because life itself is impossible, but because fear continuously drains emotional energy from their mind and body. Buddhism teaches that true peace begins when the mind stops fighting uncertainty constantly. This does not mean becoming careless. It does not mean avoiding responsibility. It means understanding that life cannot be controlled perfectly, and trying to force total certainty only creates more suffering. A peaceful person still plans wisely, still works hard, still cares deeply, but they stop mentally torturing themselves over every unknown possibility. This creates emotional freedom. Freedom to breathe peacefully, freedom to experience life fully, freedom to enjoy ordinary moments without fear constantly interrupting them. Many anxious people no longer know how to simply exist calmly because the mind has spent years living in survival mode. They constantly seek distraction because silence exposes inner tension. Phones, noise, entertainment, busyness. These things temporarily distract the mind from fear, but they do not heal it. Buddhism teaches that healing requires awareness. Awareness of thoughts, awareness of emotional habits, awareness of how much fear controls daily life unconsciously. The more awareness grows, the more clearly a person begins seeing how anxiety steals life from them. They notice how fear creates imaginary suffering, how overthinking destroys peace, how mental tension prevents gratitude, and slowly, something changes inside them. They stop wanting to live in constant fear anymore. They begin protecting peace more carefully. This transformation becomes powerful because the person finally understands something most people realize too late. Life is happening now, not someday, not after uncertainty disappears, not after everything feels safe now. This current moment is part of life itself. The more fear controls the mind, the more life passes by unnoticed. The more present the mind becomes, the more deeply life can actually be experienced. This is why Buddhism teaches presence so deeply. Presence weakens fear, because in the present moment, many imagined disasters do not actually exist. Right now there is breathing. Right now there is awareness. Right now life is unfolding. But fear constantly drags attention away from this reality into imagined future suffering. A peaceful person learns to return again and again to the present moment. This changes the emotional experience of life completely. The nervous system relaxes. Thoughts slow down. Ordinary moments become meaningful. Gratitude returns naturally. Instead of surviving psychologically every day, the person begins truly living again. This does not mean fear disappears completely forever. Fear is part of human life sometimes. But Buddhism teaches that fear does not need to control your entire existence. You can experience uncertainty without emotional collapse. You can experience difficulty without becoming consumed by anxiety. You can experience pain without losing connection with inner peace completely. This understanding creates tremendous emotional strength, because real strength is not eliminating all uncertainty from life. Real strength is remaining calm and aware even when uncertainty exists. Most people spend years trying to avoid fear externally, instead of transforming their relationship with fear internally. But Buddhism teaches that inner transformation matters more. The mind itself must learn how to stop creating endless unnecessary suffering, and this begins through awareness. The moment you begin observing fear instead of automatically obeying it, freedom quietly begins. You stop feeding every anxious thought. Stop predicting disaster constantly. Stop sacrificing every peaceful moment to future uncertainty. Instead, you begin trusting life more naturally. You understand that pain may come sometimes, but worrying constantly will never stop life from changing anyway. This realization becomes deeply liberating, because once you truly understand how temporary life is, you stop wanting fear to dominate your remaining years. You stop postponing joy, stop waiting for perfection, stop demanding total certainty before allowing yourself to feel alive. Instead, you begin living more openly. You appreciate ordinary moments. You breathe more deeply. You protect your peace more carefully. You become emotionally present inside your own existence again. And eventually, you realize something life-changing. The more you feared losing life, the more life itself was slipping away unnoticed while fear distracted your mind. This is why Buddhism teaches letting go of unnecessary worry so deeply. Because life was never meant to be spent entirely inside fear. It was meant to be experienced fully while it still exists. 17. The peace you are searching for begins. When the mind finally slows down, one of the greatest struggles human beings face is that the mind almost never stops moving. From the moment people wake up until the moment they fall asleep, thoughts continue endlessly. Worries about the future, regrets about the past, fear about uncertainty, pressure about responsibilities, comparison with others. Endless mental noise fills the mind every single day. Because of this, many people spend their whole life searching for peace externally, while the real chaos continues internally. Buddhism teaches that true peace does not begin when the world finally becomes perfect. Peace begins when the mind finally learns how to slow down. This is difficult for many people because modern life trains the mind to remain restless constantly. People rush through everything. Rush through meals, rush through conversations, rush through rest, rush through life itself. Even during moments of silence, the mind continues racing. What do I need to do next? What if something goes wrong? What will happen tomorrow? What if I fail? What if people judge me? The mind becomes addicted to movement, fear, and overthinking. Eventually, many people no longer know how to simply sit peacefully without mental chaos controlling them. Buddhism teaches that this restless mental state creates enormous suffering because a constantly agitated mind cannot experience life clearly. A noisy mind turns small problems into emotional disasters. A noisy mind cannot fully appreciate ordinary beauty. A noisy mind struggles to feel gratitude. A noisy mind lives in permanent tension. This is why so many people today feel emotionally exhausted, even when they are not physically working all the time. Their thoughts never stop. The mind becomes like a machine constantly producing fear, stress, and unnecessary suffering. Over time, the nervous system adapts to this tension and begins treating anxiety as normal life. People wake up already overwhelmed. Their chest feels heavy. Their breathing feels shallow. Their thoughts immediately begin racing. And because this becomes their daily emotional reality, they start believing peace is impossible. But Buddhism teaches something deeply important. Peace is not impossible. The mind has simply forgotten stillness. Many people search for peace through distraction instead of awareness. They constantly consume noise to escape their own thoughts. Phones, entertainment, social media, endless stimulation, constant busyness. These things temporarily distract the mind, but they do not create inner calmness. The moment silence returns, anxiety returns too. This happens because the mind itself remains restless internally. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because mindfulness retrains the mind to slow down and reconnect with the present moment again. Mindfulness teaches awareness of breathing, awareness of thoughts, awareness of emotions, awareness of ordinary life. At first, this can feel uncomfortable for anxious people because they suddenly notice how noisy the mind has become. They notice how often fear appears, how quickly the mind jumps toward negativity, how addicted the mind has become to overthinking. But awareness is the beginning of healing, because once a person becomes conscious of their mental patterns, they stop unconsciously feeding those patterns automatically. This changes everything internally. Instead of instantly believing every fearful thought, they begin observing thoughts calmly. Instead of emotionally reacting to every uncertainty, they begin slowing down mentally. Instead of constantly running toward the future psychologically, they begin reconnecting with the present moment. This creates inner space. And inside that space, peace slowly begins growing. Many people do not realize how deeply overthinking affects the body too. A restless mind creates a restless nervous system. The body remains tense, sleep becomes difficult, breathing becomes shallow, the heart feels heavy, rest feels impossible. Even during peaceful situations, the nervous system behaves as if danger is nearby. This is why many anxious people cannot fully relax anymore. Their mind has become trained to search for problems constantly. Buddhism teaches that slowing down the mind also heals the body emotionally. As awareness grows, breathing becomes calmer, thoughts become slower, the nervous system softens. The body stops carrying so much invisible tension. This creates tremendous emotional relief. Most people spend years mentally running without realizing how exhausted they truly are internally. They are tired of worrying, tired of overthinking, tired of carrying invisible fear every day. But they continue feeding mental chaos unconsciously because they do not know another way of living. Buddhism teaches that stillness is not laziness. Stillness is healing. A still mind sees life more clearly. A still mind experiences ordinary moments more deeply. A still mind suffers less because it no longer creates unnecessary emotional noise constantly. Many people fear slowing down because silence exposes their inner pain. When external distraction disappears, they suddenly face their own thoughts directly. Fear appears, loneliness appears, regret appears, anxiety appears. This can feel overwhelming at first. But Buddhism teaches that healing begins the moment a person becomes willing to observe their inner world honestly, instead of constantly escaping from it. The more awareness grows, the less fear controls the mind automatically. This creates emotional freedom. The mind stops reacting impulsively to every thought. It stops treating every uncertainty like an emergency. It stops creating catastrophic stories constantly. Instead, calmness begins appearing more naturally. This calmness changes the entire experience of life. Simple moments become meaningful again. A quiet morning feels peaceful. A walk outside feels healing. A deep breath feels grounding. Silence no longer feels empty. Many people spend their entire life searching for happiness in excitement, achievement, or external success, while ignoring the condition of their own mind. But Buddhism teaches that no external success can permanently calm an internally restless mind. The anxious mind will always create another problem, another fear, another uncertainty. This is why peace must be cultivated internally. A calm mind experiences life differently than a fearful mind. A fearful mind constantly asks, "What could go wrong?" A peaceful mind notices what is here right now. This difference changes everything emotionally, because life itself only exists in the present moment. But restless minds rarely stay present for long. They rush into the future, replay the past, create imaginary suffering, predict disaster constantly. And because of this, they miss the direct experience of being alive. Buddhism teaches that slowing down the mind reconnects people with life again. Not life as imagination, not life as fear, but life as it actually exists right now. This awareness becomes transformative. The person begins noticing beauty they ignored for years. The sound of rain, the warmth of sunlight, a peaceful conversation. the feeling of breathing calmly, the comfort of stillness. These things may seem ordinary, but Buddhism teaches that ordinary life itself becomes sacred once the mind becomes quiet enough to fully experience it. A restless mind overlooks these moments constantly because it is too busy mentally escaping into future anxiety. This is why many people reach old age filled with regret, not because life lacked beauty, but because the mind was too distracted to fully notice it. They spent years mentally racing toward the future while life quietly disappeared behind them. Buddhism teaches that wisdom means waking up before this regret arrives. A wise person learns how to slow down internally while life still exists. They stop rushing through every moment unconsciously. They stop feeding every fearful thought automatically. They stop treating life like a constant emergency. Instead, they begin protecting their inner peace carefully. This creates emotional stability, not because life becomes perfect, but because the mind stops creating endless unnecessary suffering. Many people mistakenly believe peace means eliminating all problems from life, but Buddhism teaches something deeper. Peace is not the absence of all difficulty. Peace is the ability to remain inwardly calm even while life continues changing. This understanding becomes incredibly powerful, because life will always contain uncertainty sometimes. Pain will still exist sometimes. Difficult moments will still happen. But a peaceful mind no longer turns every difficulty into endless emotional suffering. It remains grounded, aware, present. This is true inner strength. The ability to slow down the mind while the world remains chaotic. The ability to breathe calmly while uncertainty exists. The ability to remain connected to the present moment instead of drowning in fear constantly. Most people are not destroyed by life itself. They are destroyed by the endless mental noise inside their own mind. This is why Buddhism places such deep importance on awareness and stillness. Because stillness heals. Stillness reconnects people with themselves. Stillness weakens anxiety. Stillness allows peace to grow naturally. The more the mind slows down, the more clearly life can finally be experienced. And eventually, the person realizes something deeply important. The peace they spent their whole life searching for externally was waiting underneath the noise of their own restless mind all along, not hidden in the future, not hidden in achievement, not hidden in perfection, but hidden beneath the endless overthinking, fear, worry, and mental chaos that had been distracting them from life itself. This is why Buddhism teaches slowing down so deeply, because when the mind finally slows down, the heart finally remembers what peace feels like again. 18. The day you stop overthinking is the day life starts feeling real. Again, one of the biggest reasons people feel emotionally exhausted today is because the mind never truly rests anymore. From morning until night, thoughts continue endlessly. The mind keeps analyzing, predicting, worrying, comparing, regretting, and imagining problems constantly. Even when nothing terrible is happening, the mind creates emotional pressure by endlessly overthinking life. Buddhism teaches that much of human suffering is created not by reality itself, but by the mind's inability to remain present and peaceful. Most people are not suffering from what is happening right now. They are suffering from thoughts about what could happen tomorrow. This is why overthinking becomes so dangerous. The mind turns uncertainty into fear, small problems into emotional disasters, simple mistakes into endless self-judgment. Over time, people stop experiencing life directly because thoughts constantly interrupt reality. They sit with loved ones while mentally replaying stress. They walk outside while trapped inside anxious thinking. They try to rest while the mind continues racing endlessly. The body exists in the present moment, but the mind lives somewhere else entirely. Buddhism teaches that this creates deep emotional disconnection from life itself. Many people do not realize how much overthinking steals from them because it has become such a normal habit. They believe constantly worrying means they are being responsible or prepared, but endless mental noise rarely creates wisdom. Most of the time, it creates emotional exhaustion. A person trapped in overthinking rarely feels calm internally. The nervous system stays tense. Breathing becomes shallow, Peace feels temporary, rest feels uncomfortable. Even during moments when life is safe and quiet, the mind keeps searching for danger automatically. This happens because overthinking trains the brain to remain trapped in survival mode constantly. The mind becomes addicted to solving problems even when no immediate problem exists. What if something goes wrong? What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if life becomes difficult again? These thoughts repeat every day until anxiety becomes part of the person's identity. Buddhism teaches that the human mind becomes shaped by repeated thinking patterns. If the mind constantly feeds fear, fear grows stronger. If the mind constantly feeds worry, anxiety becomes normal. If the mind constantly feeds negativity, peace slowly disappears. This is why awareness becomes so important spiritually. Without awareness, people spend their whole life trapped inside unconscious mental suffering. They overthink automatically, fear automatically, react automatically. And because these patterns repeat for years, they eventually begin controlling the entire emotional experience of life. Many people are not physically imprisoned, but mentally they feel trapped every single day, trapped inside thoughts, trapped inside fear, trapped inside endless mental noise. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because mindfulness interrupts this unconscious cycle. Mindfulness teaches people how to observe the mind instead of becoming completely controlled by it. This changes everything internally. Instead of automatically believing every thought, you begin watching thoughts more calmly. Instead of emotionally reacting to every fear, you become more aware. Instead of drowning inside overthinking, you slowly create space inside the mind. And inside that space, peace begins returning. Many anxious people have forgotten what silence feels like emotionally. Their mind has been noisy for so long that calmness feels unfamiliar. This is why many people constantly distract themselves. Phones, social media, entertainment, noise, busyness. Not because these things truly fulfill them, but because distraction temporarily hides inner restlessness. The silence appears, anxiety rises again. Because the real problem was never external life, the real struggle was the condition of the mind itself. Buddhism teaches that healing begins when a person becomes willing to sit with themselves honestly, to observe thoughts without escaping, to notice fear without feeding it, to breathe slowly without rushing mentally into the future constantly. At first, this can feel uncomfortable, because people suddenly realize how exhausted their mind has become. They notice how often they overthink, how often they fear the worst, how rarely they stay fully present. But this awareness becomes deeply healing because it breaks unconscious suffering. Most people spend their whole life inside their thoughts without ever questioning them. The mind says, "You are failing. You should worry more. Something bad is coming." And people immediately believe these thoughts automatically. But Buddhism teaches that thoughts are not always truth. Sometimes the mind exaggerates. Sometimes fear creates illusions. Sometimes anxiety invents suffering that does not even exist yet. This realization creates emotional freedom, because the moment you stop treating a thought like reality, the mind begins calming down. The nervous system softens, breathing slows, the heart feels lighter, and slowly life starts feeling real again. This is one of the deepest teachings of Buddhism. Overthinking disconnects people from direct experience. When the mind is constantly trapped in analysis and fear, people stop fully experiencing ordinary moments. Food loses flavor because attention is elsewhere. Conversations lose depth because the mind is distracted. Nature loses beauty because anxiety interrupts presence. The person is alive physically but absent emotionally. But when overthinking slows down, awareness returns to life itself. Suddenly, small moments begin feeling meaningful again. A peaceful morning feels calming. The sound of rain feels beautiful. A deep breath feels grounding. Silence feels healing instead of uncomfortable. This happens because the mind is no longer constantly escaping reality through fear. Buddhism teaches that true peace exists inside the present moment. But overthinking constantly drags people away from the present into imagined futures and painful memories. The person mentally lives everywhere except here. This is why so many people feel disconnected from life emotionally. They are never fully present long enough to truly experience it. Many people spend years waiting for life to finally feel meaningful, while the real problem is that the mind never stops interrupting life with noise. The quieter the mind becomes, the more clearly life can actually be experienced. This changes priorities completely. The person stops chasing endless stimulation, stops needing constant distraction, stops treating every moment like an emergency. Instead, they begin appreciating ordinary life more deeply. Buddhism teaches that ordinary moments are not small. Ordinary moments are life itself. A cup of tea, a peaceful walk, a quiet evening, a conversation with someone you love, a moment of stillness. These things become emotionally powerful once the mind becomes calm enough to truly notice them. But overthinking blinds people to these experiences. The mind becomes so obsessed with future fear that it overlooks present beauty completely. This creates enormous regret later in life. Many people eventually realize they spent more time thinking about life than actually living it. They worried during peaceful moments, overthought during beautiful experiences, stayed mentally distracted while life quietly passed by. Then suddenly years disappear. Buddhism teaches impermanence because awareness of impermanence awakens people from unconscious living. Everything changes, everything passes, nothing remains forever. This truth makes the present moment incredibly precious. The more deeply you understand this, the less interested you become in wasting your life trapped inside endless overthinking. You stop wanting fear to dominate every moment. You stop wanting anxiety controlling your emotional state constantly. Instead, you begin protecting your peace more carefully. This creates inner stillness. Not perfect stillness, not a mind without thoughts forever, but a calmer relationship with your thoughts. The mind stops attacking itself constantly, stops creating unnecessary suffering automatically, and because of this, life becomes lighter emotionally. Many people believe happiness comes from achieving more externally, but Buddhism teaches that happiness often begins when unnecessary mental noise finally weakens. Because overthinking steals emotional energy from everything. It steals joy, steals gratitude, steals peace, steals presence. A person trapped in constant mental noise struggles to fully enjoy life because the mind never allows them to rest emotionally. But a peaceful mind experiences life completely differently. The person becomes more present, more emotionally connected, more aware of beauty, more grateful for ordinary moments. This transformation feels powerful because the person realizes something deeply important. Peace was never hidden somewhere far away. It was hidden underneath all the overthinking. Buddhism teaches that awareness slowly removes the layers of fear, noise, and mental chaos covering inner peace. And as those layers weaken, the person reconnects with life again. Not life as anxiety imagines it, not life as fear predicts it, but life as it actually exists right now. Simple, temporary, beautiful, fragile. This awareness changes everything emotionally. You stop rushing so much internally. You stop carrying so much invisible tension. You stop needing to mentally control every future outcome before allowing yourself to feel calm. Instead, you begin trusting life more naturally. You understand that uncertainty is part of existence, that overthinking cannot fully protect you from pain anyway, that fear only steals peace from the moments you already have. This realization becomes liberating, because once the mind finally slows down, life stops feeling distant and emotionally numb. It starts feeling real again. The colors of life return, the heart softens, the nervous system relaxes, presence deepens, and eventually, you realize something most people discover too late. The peace you were searching for was never found by thinking more. It was found the moment the mind finally became quiet enough to fully experience life again. 19. You cannot heal while constantly living in fear. One of the deepest reasons many people never experience real peace is because their mind never leaves survival mode. Even when life becomes quiet, the nervous system remains tense. Even when there is no immediate danger, fear continues controlling thoughts, emotions, and behavior. Buddhism teaches that a person cannot truly heal emotionally while constantly living inside anxiety and psychological fear. Healing requires safety inside the mind. But many people have become so used to fear that calmness itself feels unfamiliar. Their thoughts move so fast, their worries repeat so often, and their nervous system stays so overwhelmed that they no longer remember what inner stillness feels like. They wake up anxious, sleep anxious, think anxiously, move through life anxiously, and because this emotional state lasts for years, they slowly start believing this is simply normal existence. But Buddhism teaches that the human mind was never meant to remain trapped in permanent emotional tension. A fearful mind cannot fully rest, cannot fully trust, cannot fully experience joy, cannot fully connect with life deeply. This is why so many people feel emotionally exhausted, even when they are not physically doing much. The mind itself becomes heavy. Many people carry invisible emotional weight every single day. Fear about the future, fear about failure, fear about losing people, fear about not being enough, fear about uncertainty. These fears slowly accumulate inside the nervous system until the person begins living in constant internal pressure. Over time, this emotional pressure affects everything. Sleep becomes difficult, peace becomes temporary, relationships become stressful, the body becomes tense, the heart becomes tired. Buddhism teaches that healing cannot fully happen while the mind continuously feeds itself fear every day. Because the nervous system listens to the mind constantly. If the mind repeatedly says, "Danger is everywhere, something bad will happen, you are not safe, you should worry more," then the body begins believing those messages emotionally. This creates survival mode. The person becomes hyper-alert constantly, overthinks constantly, emotionally prepares for disaster constantly. Even ordinary situations begin feeling emotionally threatening. A delayed message creates anxiety. A mistake creates panic. A difficult conversation creates emotional exhaustion. The nervous system becomes overwhelmed because the mind never stops expecting danger. This is why Buddhism teaches mindfulness and awareness so deeply. Mindfulness interrupts unconscious fear. It teaches people how to return attention to the present moment instead of endlessly escaping into future anxiety. Because most fear does not exist in the present moment itself. It exists inside imagination. What if something goes wrong? What if I fail? What if life hurts me again? The mind keeps creating future pain repeatedly until the body itself begins suffering emotionally. But Buddhism teaches that healing begins when the mind slowly stops feeding these fearful patterns automatically. This does not happen overnight. A fearful mind often takes years to calm because anxiety becomes habitual. People become addicted to overthinking, addicted to mentally preparing for pain, addicted to expecting disappointment. Even when life becomes peaceful, the mind struggles to trust peace completely. It keeps waiting for something bad to happen. This is why many people sabotage their own healing without realizing it. They want peace but continue feeding fear daily. Want calmness but continue overthinking constantly. Want emotional freedom but remain attached to anxious thinking patterns. Buddhism teaches that awareness is the first step toward healing because awareness allows people to finally observe what the mind is doing unconsciously. You begin noticing how often fear controls your emotions, how often anxiety exaggerates situations, how often overthinking steals peace from ordinary moments. This awareness becomes transformative because unconscious suffering finally becomes visible. Many people spend years trapped inside fear without ever questioning it. The mind says, "You should worry more. You are not safe yet. Something terrible could happen." And people immediately believe these thoughts automatically. But Buddhism teaches that thoughts are not permanent truth. Thoughts come and go. Fear comes and goes. Emotions rise and fall. The problem begins when people attach themselves to fearful thoughts constantly. Then anxiety becomes identity. A person starts believing, "This is just who I am. I will always feel this way. Peace is impossible for me." But Buddhism teaches that the mind can change. A restless mind can become calmer. A fearful mind can become more peaceful. An anxious nervous system can slowly heal. This healing begins when the mind finally experiences moments of stillness again, moments where overthinking pauses, where breathing slows down, where the present moment becomes more important than future fear. At first, these moments may feel small: a quiet breath, a peaceful walk, a few moments of silence, a calm evening without mental chaos. But these moments matter deeply because they remind the nervous system what safety feels like again. Healing is not always dramatic. Sometimes healing is simply the mind learning, I do not need to stay afraid all the time. This realization changes everything emotionally. The person begins relaxing internally, stops mentally fighting life constantly, stops expecting disaster every moment, and slowly the nervous system softens. Buddhism teaches that suffering becomes lighter when the mind stops resisting reality constantly. Many people are emotionally exhausted because they are trying to control life completely, control every outcome, control every future possibility, control every uncertainty. But life cannot be controlled perfectly. The more a person fights uncertainty, the more tension grows internally. A peaceful person understands life will always contain unknowns. Pain is part of being human sometimes. Nothing stays permanent forever. And because they accept this truth, fear loses some of its emotional power over them. Meanwhile, anxious people often demand impossible guarantees from life before allowing themselves to feel safe emotionally. They want certainty before peace, perfection before happiness, control before calmness. But Buddhism teaches that peace begins the moment the mind stops demanding total certainty from existence. This creates enormous emotional freedom. The person no longer wastes all their energy trying to mentally predict every future problem. They no longer spend every peaceful moment waiting for disaster. Instead, they begin reconnecting with life again. This is important because fear disconnects people from direct experience. An anxious mind cannot fully enjoy ordinary moments because fear constantly interrupts presence. The person sits in nature but keeps worrying, spends time with loved ones but remains mentally distracted, experiences good moments but emotionally expects them to disappear. Over time, this creates emotional numbness. Life stops feeling fully alive. Buddhism teaches that healing reconnects people with the present moment again. Colors feel brighter, silence feels peaceful, ordinary moments feel meaningful, breathing feels grounding. This happens because the mind is no longer trapped entirely inside fear. The quieter the mind becomes, the more deeply life can actually be experienced. Many people think healing means becoming permanently happy all the time. But Buddhism teaches something deeper. Healing means the mind stops attacking itself constantly. The person stops creating endless unnecessary suffering through fear and overthinking. This creates inner peace, not perfect peace, not a life without pain, but a calmer relationship with thoughts, emotions, and uncertainty. This calmness becomes powerful because the person finally understands something deeply important. Fear was never truly protecting their life. It was preventing them from fully living it. Many people spend years emotionally hiding from life because they are afraid of pain. But in the process, they miss joy through vulnerability. They avoid uncertainty, avoid emotional openness, and eventually, life starts feeling emotionally distant and empty. Buddhism teaches that true living requires openness to existence itself, openness to uncertainty, openness to change, openness to temporary moments. Because everything in life is temporary anyway. This truth may sound frightening at first, but spiritually it becomes liberating. Once you deeply understand impermanence, you stop wanting fear to steal the moments you still have left. You begin protecting peace more carefully. You begin appreciating ordinary life more deeply. You begin slowing down internally, and slowly healing relaxes. Thoughts become quieter. The heart softens. Life feels real again. Most importantly, you stop treating existence like something you must survive every second. Instead, you begin experiencing it consciously. This is why Buddhism teaches awareness so deeply, because awareness heals unconscious fear. Awareness weakens anxiety. Awareness reconnects people with peace. The more awareness grows, the less the mind automatically feeds itself suffering. And eventually, something beautiful happens. The person realizes they no longer want fear controlling their life anymore. They no longer want anxiety stealing every peaceful moment. No longer want overthinking dominating their existence. Instead, they choose calmness, presence, acceptance, inner stillness. Not because life became perfect, but because the mind finally stopped living in permanent fear all the time. And that is when true healing finally begins. 20. The moment you stop fighting life, peace finally enters the mind. One of the deepest reasons human beings suffer emotionally is because they spend most of their life fighting reality internally. They fight uncertainty, fight change, fight endings, fight pain, fight the present moment. The mind constantly demands that life should happen differently than it actually is. Buddhism teaches that this constant inner resistance creates enormous suffering. Many people wake up every day mentally arguing with reality. This should not be happening. My life should look different. People should treat me differently. I should already feel successful. Nothing painful should happen to me. The mind continuously resists what already exists. And because of this resistance, peace disappears. Buddhism teaches that pain itself is part of life, but mental resistance multiplies suffering far beyond the original pain. A difficult moment happens once, but the mind replays it hundreds of times. A painful memory appears once, but overthinking keeps reopening the wound repeatedly. This is why many people stay emotionally trapped inside suffering for years, not because reality itself lasted forever, but because the mind never stopped fighting reality internally. Many people believe peace will come after life finally becomes perfect. But Buddhism teaches that peace does not come from controlling life completely. Peace begins the moment the mind stops fighting life constantly. This changes everything spiritually. Because most anxiety comes from trying to control things that cannot be controlled permanently. People want certainty about the future, certainty about relationships, certainty about success, certainty about life itself. But life has never promised permanent certainty. Everything changes constantly. People change, circumstances change, emotions change, entire chapters of life disappear unexpectedly. The more attached a person becomes to controlling every outcome, the more fragile their emotional state becomes. Buddhism teaches acceptance, because acceptance ends much of this unnecessary inner war. Acceptance does not mean weakness. It does not mean giving up on life. It simply means the mind stops wasting enormous emotional energy resisting reality every second. A peaceful person still works hard, still cares deeply, still experiences emotions. But they stop demanding that life must always go according to their expectations before allowing themselves to feel calm. This creates emotional freedom. Many anxious people live as if life itself is an enemy constantly trying to hurt them. Their mind remains trapped in defense mode all the time. They expect disappointment, expect rejection, expect pain, expect disaster. Because of this, the nervous system rarely relaxes. Even during peaceful moments, fear continues operating internally. The mind says, "Do not trust this peace. Something bad is coming. You should worry more." Over time, anxiety becomes normal. People forget what true calmness feels like. Buddhism teaches that the mind creates suffering when it continuously resists the natural flow of life. Life was never designed to remain perfectly stable forever. Relationships change, bodies age, situations rise and fall. Pain appears sometimes, joy appears sometimes. Everything moves. The more a person demands permanence from temporary things, the more suffering grows internally. This is why Buddhism teaches impermanence so deeply. Not to create fear, but to create wisdom. Because once you truly understand that life is constantly changing, you stop wasting so much energy fighting change itself. You stop expecting certainty from an uncertain world. You stop demanding permanent control over temporary experiences. And because of this, the mind slowly relaxes. Many people spend years emotionally exhausting themselves trying to mentally control the future. They overthink every possibility, replay every mistake, prepare for every disaster. But no amount of overthinking can fully control life. The only thing excessive worry truly accomplishes is stealing peace from the present moment. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because mindfulness brings the mind back to reality instead of mental resistance. Back to breathing, back to awareness, back to what actually exists right now. Most suffering exists inside psychological resistance. The mind says, this moment should not exist. This pain should disappear immediately. This uncertainty is unbearable. But the more the mind fights reality internally, the heavier suffering becomes. A peaceful person learns something deeply important. Life becomes lighter when the mind stops arguing with every moment constantly. This understanding transforms emotional experience completely. Instead of reacting impulsively to every difficulty, the person becomes calmer. Instead of emotionally collapsing every time life changes, they adapt more naturally. Instead of overthinking endlessly, they return attention to the present moment. This creates inner steadiness. Many people believe emotional strength means controlling life perfectly. But Buddhism teaches that real strength is remaining inwardly calm, even when life cannot be controlled fully. This is why some people remain peaceful during difficult seasons, while others collapse emotionally under uncertainty. The difference is often not external reality itself. The difference is the relationship the mind has with reality. A fearful mind resists everything. A peaceful mind flows with life more naturally. Many anxious people unknowingly create enormous suffering by refusing to accept what already exists. They replay the past repeatedly, wishing it had happened differently. They fear the future, constantly wishing certainty existed. They resist painful emotions instead of allowing emotions to move naturally through the body. This creates emotional blockage. The nervous system becomes overwhelmed because the mind never stops fighting experience itself. Buddhism teaches that healing begins when the mind allows reality to exist without constant internal resistance. This does not mean liking pain. It means no longer multiplying suffering through endless mental conflict. For example, sadness itself may last temporarily, but resistance can make sadness last for years. Fear may appear naturally sometimes, but overthinking feeds fear continuously until anxiety becomes permanent. The mind itself often becomes the source of prolonged suffering. This is why Buddhism teaches awareness. Awareness allows a person to notice, how much suffering am I creating through resistance? How much energy am I wasting fighting reality? How often am I mentally attacking life itself? These questions become spiritually powerful because they reveal how unconscious suffering operates internally. Many people are not only tired from life, they are tired from constantly fighting life, fighting uncertainty, fighting emotions, fighting change, fighting themselves. This constant inner battle drains emotional energy completely. Buddhism teaches that peace enters the mind when this battle finally slows down. Not because life becomes easy, but because the mind stops making every experience harder than it already is. This creates tremendous relief emotionally. Breathing becomes softer, thoughts become quieter, the nervous system relaxes. Ordinary moments become easier to appreciate. Many people spend their whole life waiting for external peace, while ignoring the war happening inside their own mind. But external peace cannot fully calm internal resistance. Even successful people suffer when the mind constantly fights reality. This is why Buddhism teaches inner transformation first. The mind itself must change. The relationship with thoughts must change. The relationship with uncertainty must change. The relationship with pain must change. Once this transformation begins, life starts feeling different emotionally. The person stops treating every problem like a catastrophe, stops expecting perfect certainty before allowing themselves to feel calm, stops carrying so much invisible emotional tension daily. Instead, they begin trusting life more naturally. This trust is important because fear weakens when the mind stops demanding complete control. A peaceful person understands. Life may become difficult sometimes. Pain may appear sometimes. Things may change unexpectedly. But they also understand, I do not need to mentally destroy myself over uncertainty every day. This realization becomes incredibly freeing. Because the mind finally stops trying to control everything constantly. And when the mind stops fighting life so aggressively, something beautiful begins happening internally. Space appears. Space for peace. Space for gratitude. Space for healing. Space for presence. The heart softens. The nervous system calms. The person becomes emotionally available to life again. This is why Buddhism teaches surrendering unnecessary resistance. Not surrendering responsibility, not surrendering wisdom, but surrendering the endless mental war against reality itself. Because eventually, every person realizes something deeply important. Life will continue changing no matter how much fear exists. Time will continue moving no matter how much overthinking exists. Pain will still appear sometimes no matter how much anxiety tries to prevent it. But peace becomes possible the moment the mind stops fighting every moment of existence constantly. This understanding changes the entire human experience. The person begins living more consciously, breathing more deeply, appreciating ordinary moments more sincerely. They stop postponing peace endlessly into the future. Instead, they begin experiencing calmness now, not because everything became perfect, but because the mind finally stopped resisting life every second. And perhaps this is one of the deepest truths Buddhism teaches. The moment you stop fighting life constantly, life stops feeling like a battle inside your own mind. And that is the moment peace finally enters. Life becomes very heavy when the mind never stops worrying. Many people spend years trapped inside fear, overthinking, anxiety, and emotional exhaustion, without realizing how much peace they are losing every single day. They become so focused on controlling the future that they forget to experience the present. They become so afraid of pain that they stop fully living altogether. But Buddhism teaches something deeply important. Most suffering is created inside the mind long before reality itself creates suffering. The more you worry, the less you truly live. The more fear controls your mind, the more life quietly passes you by unnoticed. No amount of overthinking can fully control life. No amount of anxiety can guarantee permanent safety. Life will always contain uncertainty, change, endings, and unexpected moments. But peace becomes possible the moment you stop mentally fighting life all the time. You stop demanding perfection. Stop feeding every fearful thought. Stop sacrificing today because of tomorrow's imaginary problems. Instead, you begin slowing down internally. You begin appreciating simple moments again. A peaceful morning, a deep breath, a conversation with someone you love, the feeling of being alive right now. These ordinary moments are not small. They are life itself. Buddhism teaches that true happiness is not found in controlling everything perfectly. True happiness is found in developing a calm and peaceful mind that can remain present even in an uncertain world. Because one day, life will end for every human being. And when that moment comes, nobody wishes they spent more time worrying. They wish they had lived more, loved more deeply, felt more peaceful, been more present, and appreciated the little time they had on earth before it disappeared forever. So stop allowing fear to steal your remaining years. Stop carrying unnecessary mental suffering every single day. Life is happening now. This moment matters. This breath matters. Your peace matters. And the moment you finally understand that, your entire relationship with life begins to change.